Alright, let's dive into the story of a guy whose life gets wrecked, only to become unbelievably awesome. His girlfriend dumps him for being poor and talentless, leaving him for some richer dude. But here's the thing she didn't know: our guy Lin wasn't nearly as broke as she thought. In fact, Lin's about to become a multimillionaire after discovering a wild secret. He gets a system that lets him switch jobs every week, racking up insane amounts of cash. We're talking luxury cars, prime real estate, the whole 9 yards, his ex's betrayal. That wasn't a tragedy. It was the best thing that ever happened, opening doors to women who valued him. And yeah, they were way more attractive. So our story kicks off with our hero, Lin Yi, getting fired. And the worst part, they didn't even give him a reason. He immediately calls his girlfriend, Cece, to break the news, but she cuts him off. Before he says a thing, she tells him they're breaking up, the reason. After all this time together, he's still poor. She uninvites him from her party and tells him to never, ever call her again. So, as he's standing in an elevator on the absolute worst day of his life, Lin Yi notices a strange blue light. Now pay attention, because this is the moment that changes absolutely everything. Suddenly, a beautiful woman in a maid outfit calls him master, introducing herself as Lin Wei. She welcomes him to the full career experience system. Basically, he can try a new profession every single week, and completing tasks gets him a massive final reward. He's on cloud nine. His days of being a complete nobody were officially over. As if that wasn't enough, he gets a starting prize of 10 million in cash. And a Pagani Zonda worth a cool 30 million. He jokes he could be a driver for the rest of his life with a car like this, but she reminds him of the rules. He can only try one profession per week, but honestly, Lin didn't really care. The money was already pouring in. She then hands him the car keys. His next task, he needs to go and claim the Peninsula Hotel. After she gives him the car's coordinates, the key is his. When he gets to the garage, he spots a beautiful woman in front of him named Gi Qingyang. Turns out she's having some major car trouble. When he asks what happened, she explains the situation, and he immediately offers her a ride, which she gladly accepts. But of course, a spoiled rich kid suddenly appears, trying to get his way. He throws an arm around her, offering a ride and insulting Lin for looking broke. But it's clear she's rejected this loser plenty of times before, and she does it again. So Lin takes matters into his own hands, stepping in with total confidence. He makes it clear that he'll be the one taking her where she needs to go. She tells her stalker she wouldn't mind riding in a broken-down car instead of his. You and I have been waiting for this. They both turn and see the $30 million Pagani. The spoiled brat is speechless, completely stunned. Finally, Lin calmly asks Miss G to get in, making the other guy's car look like a total joke. As they're getting in, the brat is literally begging to go for a ride with him. But he gets left behind, eating nothing but the Pagani's dust. She's amazed by the car. She asks if it's really his, since just recently he was a simple sales employee. He just smirks and says yes, he was just a rich kid experiencing what it's like to be poor. Lin then asks her to open a ride-sharing app and start a trip. He wants her to become his very first customer, and so she does. With the request made, he drives her to the location and says goodbye to his first passenger. And just like that, a tiny fairy version of the girl appears on his shoulder. She congratulates him on his first job and drops a massive reward on him. 50 million for one ride. Yeah, his mind was absolutely blown. Meanwhile, at the Peninsula Hotel, his ex is with her new rich boyfriend. She's gushing about how she wishes she'd met him sooner when she spots him. Lin was right there. She immediately assumes he's come crawling back for her. But nope, he makes it crystal clear he's just there to blow some cash. So what does she do? She calls security to get him thrown out. And to rub it in, she has the nerve to call him a beggar. Now watch this. The moment security arrives, they all bow down to him, total respect. Her and her boyfriend just stare, jaws on the floor, at the authority he commands. And it gets better. One of the guards asks him to come to the meeting room. The boss needs him to review their performance report. That's right, he owns the place. It finally dawns on that snake. She threw away a man of serious wealth. In the meeting, an employee reports a customer complaint against them. Apparently, they rented out a car that was reserved for VIP users. He hands off the finances and decides to handle this one himself. He heads over to talk to the girl. When she opens the door, he promises to solve it. Her name's Gu Jing Sua, but we'll just call her Jin from now on. Our protagonist then asks if she'd be interested in renting his Pagani instead. But she can't afford that kind of supercar, so she says she wouldn't know how. Smoothly, he suggests he could just drive her there himself. She accepts, asking him to wait just a minute while she gets ready. And while she gets ready, well, he gets a view not many people get in life. Finally, she's ready to go. Back in the main hall, things are getting interesting. The snake is in the middle of dumping her new rich boyfriend, who's stunned. He finally sees her for the gold digger she truly is. Cece is so smug. She actually thinks Lin will forgive her after all the years they spent together. Her friend starts getting jealous, but Cece smugly says not to worry. She promises they'll go for a ride in the Pagani later. Yeah, about that. Little did she know, Lin was already with some very good company. Cece walks right up to him like nothing ever happened, offering to handle his business. Lin, with a completely straight face, tells her that's none of her concern. She immediately plays the victim, asking if he doesn't love her anymore. She even has the gall to say the girl beside him isn't good enough. Jin jumps right into the game, saying just a moment ago, Lin said something different. She says he told her she was much better than his ex-girlfriend. Ouch. And he piles on, adding that she also has incredible flexibility, the burn. As they turn to leave, his ex desperately says she's willing to be his second option. But he just tells her to get lost and to never, ever bother him again. He leaves her completely humiliated on the floor, payback for that phone call. Inside the car, she tells him her destination and apologizes for the trouble. But he says it was no bother at all, especially since she helped him out too. They pull up to the hotel, where her friends are waiting for her. You and I can already hear them complaining she's late, little do they know. Trust me, you're about to see the ultimate, I was just pretending to be poor moment. A short while later, he rolls up in a Pagani, leaving her friends speechless. She reminds him that she helped him out before, and now it's his turn to return the favor. And Lin, playing the part perfectly, says his goodbyes like a real boyfriend. Meanwhile, across town, an old landlady was complaining her head off. She grumbles that Lin is 10 days late on rent, while her daughter tries to calm her down. The old woman is convinced he's just going to pack up and run off without paying. Just then, a knock on the door, and who is it? Lin himself. He's here to say goodbye for good, just grabbing the last of his things. But the landlady blocks the way, demanding he pay what he owes before leaving. He owed 2,000, but sends 4,000 straight to her account. A little extra compensation, he says, for being late with the payment. Shocked by his sudden move, she asks if he found a new job, and he vaguely mentions driving. As he heads for his car, the suspicious old woman follows him, just to make sure. She wants to be certain he didn't steal anything from her house on his way out. And that's when they see it, a stunning Pagani parked right in front of the building. She asks where his old junker of a car is, and he finally reveals the truth. I know what you're thinking, and yep, that Pagani belongs to him, leaving her completely stunned. He just smirks and says he's done pretending, he was just experiencing poverty for fun. As he speeds off, leaving them in his dust, the landlady's daughter has an idea. She starts thinking that maybe, just maybe, she has a shot with him now. But her mother crushes that dream instantly, saying if he wasn't good enough when he was poor. Then she has zero chance now that he's revealed his true wealth. Back at the hotel he manages, his staff has a presidential suite waiting. After so long eating cheap, he finally gets a proper meal before a message pops up. It's Miss G asking him to come pick her up now that she's finished with work. 30 minutes later, he arrives to pick up the beautiful princess. As soon as she's in the car, he asks her if she'd like to place an order. Confused, she asks what kind of order he's talking about, and he mentions the rideshare app. And okay, get ready, because this is where the story takes a weird turn. She realizes he's taking this driver gig seriously, wondering how someone so dedicated was fired. Turns out she works at the same company, but in a management position. Suddenly, the system girl from before appears, telling him not to worry. Apparently, Miss G can't see her at all. The system then rates the girl in his car as incredibly beautiful, with a score of 85. With his second request completed, he gets a brand new task from the system. He now has to give a ride to 2 women with a score of 85 or higher. Lin asks what kind of woman even gets a score that high. The system girl basically says, someone exactly like Miss G. Back in reality, the beautiful woman asks if he can take her home. It seems like she's going through a much harder time than he is. He asks if her problem is personal or business, and she confirms it's a business issue. They need to host a launch event soon, but haven't been able to book a hotel. You and I both know what's about to happen when he suggests the Peninsula Hotel. She immediately dismisses the idea, thinking reservations there are impossible to get. But that's not necessarily true. Life is full of surprises, and she compliments him on his smooth talking, telling him to turn the car around for the Peninsula Hotel. She throws in a condition, though. If they don't get a deal, he's paying for the detour. And when he asks what happens if she does get the deal, she tosses the question right back. What reward would he want? His price, she has to do 10 squats in front of him. He even tells her to look up the specific type on her phone, and yeah, she realizes it's way too embarrassing. But then she remembers she already called earlier to try and book a spot. The manager told her straight up that there was absolutely nothing available. So her odds of winning are basically guaranteed, and she confidently accepts his offer. At the hotel reception, Miss G steps up and asks to speak with manager Wang. The receptionist immediately wonders if this is the boss's new flame. Another rich heir pretending to be poor, and honestly, she's much prettier than his ex. In the hall, the manager greets her, and she asks if they have an auditorium available. And here's where it gets good, because thanks to Lin's secretly commanding things, the manager suddenly says he can arrange the rental for any day she wants. She is absolutely thrilled and thanks him, locking in the date she needs. Just like that, her problem is completely solved. But Lin casually reminds her it's time to keep her end of the promise. She playfully asks if he even remembers their little bet. Oh, he definitely remembers. Besides, as president of her company, a promise is a promise. She has to see it through. He lines in, ready for her to begin. The only problem, they're still in the car. She suggests maybe they could go to her house to, talk about it. And since it's so cramped in the car, he agrees her house is a much better idea. He then slams on the gas, rushing to get there as quickly as possible. His excitement leaves her wondering why he's so fired up about this. Arriving at her place, she asks if he's ready to receive his payment. And of course, he gives a very clear yes. Before she begins, she adds a warning. Stick with me because she's never done this before, so he better not complain if she's bad at it. And with that, her training begins. Our protagonist is clearly enjoying this. He's savoring every second, but she only manages to do one before disaster strikes. Her father suddenly appears out of nowhere, asking what on earth his daughter is doing. The two of them are frozen, completely speechless after being caught. Miss G, totally embarrassed, quickly claims that Lin is her new yoga instructor. But her father isn't buying it, since no instructor just stands there watching. They're supposed to do the movements together, he points out. She insists he's an advanced instructor, there for verbal guidance only. Not convinced, the old man sits next to Lin and asks for his name and what he does. Lin says he's just a simple driver for a ride-hailing app. A sports car driver, that is. This makes the old man curious about what he drives. What kind of car would make his daughter get in with him? Then he sees it. The Pagani parked right out front. His entire demeanor shifts instantly. You and I just saw his opinion flip from night to day. Now, he says he can trust Lin. He can even trust him with his daughter, though she quickly says they're not like that. Next thing you know, her father is inviting them both to the family's grandfather's birthday party. Together, telling him to get on with it, and finally leaving the two of them alone. The lady insists her father totally misunderstood the situation. But then our guy does something that, not gonna lie, was pretty slick. He shows he's not here to play games, telling her they should continue right where they left off. She shoves him away before things get too heated. Turns out he was just talking about their exercises, while her mind was on a whole other kind of extracurricular activity. Just then a message hits his phone. It's his old company, asking him to a dinner that very night. So he says goodbye to Miss G, promising they'll pick things up later. He arrives, and a woman who's clearly the boss there asks him to sit down, laying the praise on a little too thick. And here's the real reason for this whole invite. You and I both know this is a total setup. They just want to make him jealous. Because one of the other employees just got promoted to head of sales. Yep, Lin called it perfectly. Suddenly, a restaurant worker asks whose Pagani is parked outside. And while Lin is asking what's wrong with the Pagani, these other guys who could only dream of a car like that are just staring at the masterpiece. The employee says it's blocking other cars and asks the owner to please move it. When one of Lin's old coworkers tells him to knock it off, Lin reveals the Pagani is actually his. Oh, you just love to see it, right? With that one move, he completely shuts down the guy who was there to humiliate him. He tells the girl who invited him he's out, but that he's taking some food to go. After that, the snake from before apologizes to Lin, begging him to stay, but Lin just shuts him down. Why would he accept an apology that fake? On the way home, Miss Yin ends up walking with him, and he asks if she'd like to place an order so he can clear his mission. She's clearly down for it. But her total score is only 84 points, not enough to meet the requirements. He thinks the score has to be wrong. So he asks if she knows any way to boost a woman's charm. She pulls a piece of clothing from her bag, changes her look, and ups her style just a bit. Then she asks what he thinks, clearly fishing for something more. The new scan hits 85 points, and boom, he wins a villa in Kyushu. Now he just needs to meet the sales manager to collect his reward. Afterwards, she asks if he wants to come up for a chat, since her husband is out on business. But Lin smoothly turns her down, even though a part of him wanted to go, and they finally say their goodbyes. The next day, he heads to the Kyushu sales office to claim his prize. But an employee, who happens to be a former colleague, asks what he's doing there. He tells her he's there to get the deed to his new property. But she doesn't believe a word of it. She starts shoving him out until her superior appears and demands to know what's going on. The manager tells her to back off immediately and offers to show our hero the property herself. But the girl keeps insisting he can't afford a single villa there. The manager then tells her to go to HR because she's fired. And honestly, what a perfect ending. For all the lies, but the girl insists it wasn't a lie at all. She claims she knew everything about him, but honestly, that's just what she thought. Lin had just bought 9 villas in Kyushu. That's when she realized something. She didn't know her old classmate at all anymore. Even our hero is impressed by this. The manager apologizes for her earlier behavior, but he tells her it's fine. After all, she already fired that other rude employee. Problem solved. With the formalities done, he asks her to bring the deeds to his new properties. And just like that, she does. Along with a full set of keys, he gets a text from Miss Yin. Turns out those 2 guys who tried to humiliate him at the restaurant. They've been fired. He messages her, asking if she had anything to do with it. She reveals she looked into why he was dismissed and instantly fired them both. After chatting for a bit, she asks if he can pick her up from the office. Her car is still in the shop. a classic damsel in distress moment. And right on cue, he gets a new mission. He needs to get 5 five-star reviews. The reward for this, something new and shiny. At the end of the ride, he reminds Miss Yin. Don't forget the stars, she replies, saying she'd trade the squats for the review. Now watch this, he instantly pushes back, saying he doesn't want the 5 stars. Not if it means she gets out of doing the squats, he wants her to do all of them. All 9 that she still owes him. After that, she finally steps out of the car. Just as another woman spots her getting out of our main character's ride. Panicking, the woman tries to make up an excuse, even though no one asked anything. Yin starts overthinking, figuring she has no chance with him now. She thinks he's obviously into this Miss G lady. You and I both know she's married, but the logic for that thought was left at the hospital. The divine lady then calls Yin to get back to work. But not before leaving a perfect 5-star review for our protagonist. We then see Lin accepting a new ride on the Blah Blah app. But before he even gets there, the client has a weird request. Pretend to be her boyfriend. Of course, he accepts the young girl's plea. Arriving at the location, he sees a beautiful woman named Yu. She's a famous streamer, and let's just say she's instantly captivated by him. Yu's parents show up to meet our young hero, but the moment he says what he does. That he's a blah blah driver, their faces say it all, total disapproval. The poor girl even tries to explain that being a driver is profitable these days. But they still weren't buying a single word of it, not one bit. Before things get any worse, Yu rushes her parents to head to the party. But Lin's car only has room for 2, so they'll need another ride. As they walk towards his car, you can see them thinking the worst. That their daughter chose a total loser for a boyfriend, that is. Until they see the Pagani parked outside, and Lin tells the girl to get in. When her parents see Lin is actually loaded, their entire attitude flips. Their expressions, their tone, everything changes in a heartbeat. On the way to the party, she asks if he minds if she starts a live stream. He tells her to make herself comfortable, but in return, he wants one thing. You guessed it, a 5-star review, and her live stream is about to begin. People watching her stream thought she'd pulled some kind of con job to have been able to rent a car like this. But she quickly clarifies he's a blah blah driver. In her head, though, she admits that if he were actually paying for her company, she definitely wouldn't be playing hard to get, and I think you and I can already guess what's happening here. At the end of the trip, she gives him the 5 stars she promised. And that system bunny pops up in a pretty weird spot this time, rewarding him for hitting his goal of 5 5-star reviews. Afterwards, he asks Yu if she knows the area well, since he needs a new phone, and she immediately offers to help him out. With that, they head straight to the Bitten Apple store. And while he's picking one out, she points out they could get a way cheaper one online. But our guy doesn't really see the point. When the salesman comes back to hand over the phone, he offers a protective case to go with it. But Lin's not a fan of cases, and casually replies his plan was actually just to buy a few more phones. That way, if one breaks, he just grabs a new one. When he says he wants 5 units of each color and a MacBook too, Yu finally gets just how absurdly loaded the protagonist is. And on her live stream, things were exploding. Her audience was loving this kind of content. Leaving the store, the beautiful streamer asks if he wants to hit up one more spot to buy a few more things, and he agrees. Their next stop, a high-end watch store. Now pay attention, because it's obvious the saleswoman here is a total snob, judging them just because the girl is a streamer. He picks out a watch he wants to see, but the saleswoman isn't having it, saying the display models can only be handled after he's already paid. Which makes absolutely no sense, since you kinda need to see something up close before you decide to buy it. Suddenly, another customer walks in with his date, and it's crystal clear that the difference in treatment is about to be insane. And when the guy's companion shows interest in one of their watches, the bitter saleswoman immediately takes the watch out to show it to her up close, Seeing this, Lin is outraged by the blatant disrespect they're being shown. Feeling completely looked down on in that store. Her excuse. She says their service just matches the social level of their customers and hopes he understands. I mean, can you believe the audacity? He is beyond furious, especially since she's nothing more than a snake who only judges people by how they look. And with that, he decides to leave and take his business elsewhere. Over at the competitor's store, they are treated like absolute royalty, a complete 180 from the last place, since Lin doesn't have much experience with watches. He asks Yu for her opinion, but even she's not familiar with stuff at this insane price point. The people on her live stream tell him to just buy a watch from the anniversary collection. So Lin just goes with it, asking to see every anniversary collection watch they have in stock. Leaving all the employees, they're completely stunned by his power move. When Lin asks if that's even possible, she says of course it is. But since that watch wasn't in stock because it's a limited edition, they'd have to special order it for him. And said they'd deliver it to his house once it was ready. Yu asks why a massive store like this wouldn't have the watch in stock. Turns out only 6 of these watches even exist in the world. Now pay attention, because everyone in the Viper store was dying to know who just dropped 10 million on a watch. They rush over to see. And her jaw hits the floor when she realizes it's the exact same guy she just totally humiliated. But she still has the nerve to invite him over to check out her store, since she'd already called him too poor for her shop. He politely turns her down, leaving her on the floor, drowning in regret. Okay, let's appreciate this moment. Karma just hit her like a truck. On his way out, he apologizes for making the nice attendant help him for so long, handing her a brand new phone as a thank you and an apology. She's stunned, thanks him, and they finally go their separate ways. Later, after his last race, Lin heads to a racetrack to collect his prize. But at reception, the girl tells him they're closed to the public for a VIP. Lin clarifies he's not there to play, he needs to see the manager. Just then, a cocky young man walks in, flanked by his crew. He's Kim Han, and he demands to know why our protagonist is even there. He claims to have rented the entire track just for himself. The attendant apologizes, saying the guy is just here to see the manager. Her twin sister then offers to escort Lin to his meeting. Lin asks who this dude is that can rent a whole racetrack. The attendant explains he's a huge celebrity, a guy nobody dares to cross. Inside the manager's office, Lin gets a hero's welcome. The manager reveals to everyone that Lin is the brand new owner of their racetrack. From this moment on, he is the boss, and trust me, you are going to love this. The manager gives Lin a tour of the place he now owns, and asks if our protagonist wants to take a spin on the track. Lin can't resist and accepts his generous offer. Kim Han is furious, seeing the manager bringing someone onto his private track. But the manager quickly clarifies that this isn't just someone, it's the owner. Lin tells the manager to get these outsiders out of here. After all, he just wanted to drive a few laps on his new track. He even offers to refund Kim Han's money. No one has ever dared to treat Kim this way, so he challenges our hero to a race. Winner gets to stay. Lin accepts without a second thought. Kim smirks, curious about Lin's car, even offering to swap if his is too powerful. But when he finally sees what Lin's driving, a Pagani Zonda, and just like that, you and I both know this race is over. They line up at the start, ready to go. But it was never even a contest. Lin blows past him, winning with ease. He instantly earns the famous celebrity's respect and admiration. Kim even asks for tips on how to improve his launch off the starting line. And Lin, being the bigger man, actually gives him some pointers. Just as things settle down, Lin gets a request for another race. On his rideshare app, telling the manager he'll cover the costs so Kim can stay. The young man is stunned and asks him what kind of work he does to be able to leave in such a hurry. And when our hero says he's just a regular rideshare driver, you could hear a pin drop. The guy is completely speechless. Meanwhile, at his next pickup, we meet the divine lady he's supposed to be driving, who isn't even close to being ready for her big date. And honestly, he could not care less. She gets straight to the point, telling him to just wait and play some games or something while she gets ready. So he sits down at the computer, and that's when he notices it. He tells her there's a new email, and she, thinking it's just some boring business document, tells him to ignore it, but hold on. She suddenly realizes it's a notification for a piece of clothing she ordered online. She whips back around to stop him from seeing it, but it's too late. In her panic, she trips and starts to fall. Now pay attention, this is classic. He leaps in to catch her, trying to stop her from getting hurt. But let's just say in the process, he gets a very privileged view. We're talking instant nosebleed from the sheer shock of it all, you know the trope. Mortified, she runs off, completely ashamed. A few minutes later, she returns, all dressed up in the new outfit, asking him how she looks, and if I had to say, that outfit proves her health is in peak condition, if you catch my drift. But since I'm just the narrator, I'll keep my thoughts to myself. With that, Lin replies that the new outfit is perfect for a beauty pageant. And even more perfect for her to finally do those squats she owes him. She smirks, telling him not to worry, she hasn't forgotten her debt. And asks him to close the curtains so she can pay up, and just like that, the stage was set for some of the most educational, physical fitness you've ever seen. But since we can't show that here, we'll just have to imagine what happened next. Don't worry, you and I both know it was probably nothing too crazy, right? After she keeps her promise, she tells him to hurry up so they can get to this exchange she has to attend. But let's just say he got a little overstimulated. He makes a mad dash for the bathroom. 30 minutes later, he comes back looking happy and completely relieved. I think we all know what that was about. After all, the view he got earlier was enough to knock anyone off their feet. But suddenly, right as they're about to leave, her parents show up out of nowhere. Not wanting to interrupt the young couple, her father casually asks if they're finished, and of course, she absolutely loses her mind, demanding to know what he's talking about. The old man just says he got there a while ago. But since the curtains were closed, he didn't want to walk in on them. Even her mom jumps into the conversation, telling her there's no need to be ashamed, since it's just a normal part of life. Before they finally leave, letting them get to their event, the lady's mother invites him to her grandfather's birthday party, which is happening in 2 days. He accepts the offer, all while the divine lady is just dying of embarrassment in the background. Finally, when he drops Miss G off at her event, he just asks her not to forget to give him a 5-star rating. Let's jump back in, as our guy tells his client he'll come running for the return trip, too. She gets a little jealous, joking that he probably gets a ton of great reviews from all his female clients. And well, let's just say he couldn't exactly deny that. With a final goodbye, he tells her to get in touch if she needs anything. Just then, the girl who was a bunny before is now a cheerleader, congratulating him for completing another task, and his reward this time, 21% of the Blala company's assets, making him a CEO of Blala just for driving a few people around. She explains that the Blala headquarters building alone is valued at 500 billion. And if he sold his company stake, he could pocket at least 10 billion. But our guy is smart. He decides to keep his shares and let them generate a few hundred million in dividends every single year. She adds that he's completed 55% of his career. With an even more insane reward waiting at 100%, he gets even more excited to continue his career as a Blala driver. Or so he thought. Because you and I know his next client is about to drive him absolutely insane, parking the car next to her. He asks if she's the one he's there to pick up. And she smugly says yes, thinking she dressed so well a rich guy just had to hit on her. Once she's in the car, she asks where he's planning to take her, saying she's not an easy person to please. So he asks, wasn't she the one who ordered a ride on Blala? She is absolutely outraged. An app driver, she can't believe it. But he says this is actually the company's new luxury service, a premium version of the app. Her disappointment is so massive, her entire personality does a 180. Her true colors emerge, all because she thought she'd landed a rich guy. The whole ride, she completely stresses our protagonist out, so he decides to get revenge. He puts her through some seriously awkward and embarrassing situations. I gotta say, then he tells her to get out of his car, but as if that wasn't enough. She threatens to leave a 1-star review on the app and also call in to complain about him. Leaving her there, he gets a call from the regional agent for Blala, who immediately starts chewing him out for how he acted with a client, saying it'll be deducted from his deposit if it happens again. Lin just scoffs, telling the agent that he can deduct whatever he wants. And not liking that answer, this is where the manager makes a huge mistake. He threatens to suspend his driver's license. So Lin asks if he ever stopped to think about the consequences of suspending his license. That was checkmate. The agent just tells Lin to wait for the suspension notice and hangs up the phone right in his face. What an idiot. Afterwards, Lin decides to go visit his new villas over in Kyushu. Yeah, villas. And of course, he gets the full VIP treatment the moment he arrives. At one point, the attendant taking care of him says he hired some new housekeepers and would like to introduce them. Lin decides to go with him to meet the new staff. However, when he gets there, let's just say you and I are about to witness some glorious, instant karma. And a bag of chips, trust me, you're about to see some instant karma delivered. The manager immediately scolds his employee for her behavior. Lin then asks why she's there. Was she supposed to work as a maid or something? The woman rudely snaps back, saying it's none of his business and that a lowly driver shouldn't even be here. Hearing that arrogant tone, the manager gives the viper a hard slap right across the face. He roars, asking how she dares speak to the owner of the Kyushu court like that. Turns out the manager is her cousin, but she still refuses to believe it, insisting there's no way he's the owner, calling him just a simple employee. The manager orders her to apologize to Lin immediately, and only then does the truth hit her. She finally realizes he really is the owner of this entire place, and just like that, she swallows her pride and begs him, asking for just one more chance. But it's way too late. Lin coldly tells her she has horrible bad breath. So Lin signals the security guards to get her out of his sight. And yeah, they happily drag her away. After taking out the trash, the manager introduces the 4 housekeepers he'd arranged for Lin. Seeing they don't look too happy, he just tells them all to go back home. He'll even reimburse each of them $5,000 for their travel expenses. Classy. Just then, he gets a message from the divine lady. She's ready for her pickup. So he leaves, telling his manager to find him some new housekeepers. Meanwhile, at the divine lady's location, her friend is begging her to stay. She wants her to stick around for a second round. And then this young man named Jim chimes in, insisting he'll take her home later. But Ms. D is all business. She has to leave and she already called her ride. And speaking of the driver, he pulls up right on cue, arriving at the building to pick up his beautiful client. But get this. The young man, Jim, does not look happy to see Lin at all. While he's absolutely fuming, his friend comments that Lin is super handsome, almost like a model or an actor. With that, the spoiled little brat scoffs. He says being handsome is useless when you're just a driver. Then he asks what's wrong. The young man just says he thinks Lin is lucky to know Ms. D. But Jim snaps back, saying his friend isn't very smart, because even though he's a driver, he acts with a sense of superiority. Ms. D, not liking that comment one bit, steps in to defend him. She says he has every right to have that sense of superiority. The girl with Jim then jumps in, saying her friend just bought a Mercedes, a car the protagonist could never in a million years save up enough money to buy. After that embarrassing display, the divine lady tells Lin to just ignore them. She says they've had too much to drink and tells Lin they should leave right now, leaving the brat completely shocked that she defended Lin right in front of him. In the parking lot, the kid is showing off his little car, bragging nonstop. He even claims he's going to buy a Lamborghini once he gets rich. The divine lady casually mentions that she remembers his favorite car in college, a Pagani Zonda. He just laughs, saying because of how expensive that car is. Even if he worked his entire life, he would never be able to afford one. And speaking of a Pagani, his friend suddenly spots something right there. Was one parked right by his car, and he goes to check out the ride of his dreams, sitting right there in front of him. After a moment, our protagonist asks if he was done looking, and the guy just assumes he wants to see it too. However, when our hero asks his beautiful companion to get into his car, they were all left with their jaws on the floor, especially after realizing that gorgeous car belonged to some simple, no-name driver. And with that, he leaves the toxic people behind with his stunning damsel. Inside the car, Misty apologizes for her colleagues, saying she never imagined they would be so stuck up, but he just brushes it off and asks to take her home. However, since she's had a few drinks, she has a better idea. She wants to hit the beach to sober up, even saying she could change the destination herself, but he's cool with it, since a little fresh air never hurts. His current task was to get 10 five-star reviews. And with this one, he'd be at 7. Finally, they pull up to the beach. She then asks him to turn to the other side so she can take off her stockings. But of course, his mind immediately jumps to something else entirely. Let's just say he was a little slow to turn around, which forced her to give him a pinch, so that he would stop staring at her. My friends, do I even need to comment on this image? An absolute goddess, and you and I can both agree this is peak character design. Finally, she's ready for them to take a walk on the beach. She comments that her parents keep nagging her about her grandfather's birthday. Just as she was about to ask something, he completely reads her mind and anticipates the question. He asks if she needs him to pretend to be her boyfriend for the party. And right after, he accepts, saying he can handle it for her, especially after she worked so hard on those squats earlier. When she sees the Kyushu pavilion all lit up, she's completely blown away. Because of its outrageous price tag, the pavilion had never been sold. This was the first time she had ever seen it lit up at night. Lin says he'll drive closer to give her a better look, and if she likes it, she can even sleep there. We cut back to Miss D, thinking it would be a dream come true to sleep in the Kyushu residence. And with that, our protagonist decided to show her even more. Just watch. Arriving at the entrance, she mentions she participated in the original bidding for the land, although the result was ultimately thrown out. Anyway, since she's also a company president, he tells her not to feel envious. But she tries to play it cool, claiming it's not that. She's just curious about the indoor pool that uses mineral water flown in by air. Lin grabs her hand, saying he'll show her what it's like inside then. But she's terrified of getting caught, content to just look from the outside. But the protagonist then asks her a very simple question. What does he get if he actually manages to get her inside? She promises to wear a bikini and put on one hell of a show just for him. And honestly, that just maxed out his motivation to get his reward. They head inside the Kyushu pavilion, and she's stunned at how easy it was to enter. She even wonders where all the security is, since it's supposed to be the best of the best. Alright, let's see how our guy plays this one. Arriving inside, she spots a fruit tree nearby. Trying to get closer, he asks if she wants to pick some, but she politely turns him down. But when she lays eyes on the pool, she's completely blown away by its beauty. And now that they've seen the pool, it was time for Miss Jai to keep her promise. Or it would be if she actually had a bikini with her and knew how to swim. So yeah, probably best if they just talked about that some other time. With no other options, he has to accept what she said, but she swears to him. She promises she'll keep her word and they will come back so she can pay up. That's when he asks if she wouldn't like a quick peek at the inside of the house. But she's already on edge about being caught and thinks it's safer to just stay put. He tells her not to worry, since there's absolutely no one else in the villa. He urges her to come in, and then her jaw hits the floor. And get this, he touches the door and it welcomes him home, revealing the house was his all along. That's when she finally realizes she's been played, scolding him for deceiving her this whole time. While admiring the insane interior of the place, she asks just how much he spent. His answer is casual, telling her he only dropped a few billion on it. Thinking he's trying to fool her again, she says the most expensive villa is only 1.2 billion. Unless, of course, he bought the entire Kyushu pavilion complex. And then he finally reveals it. Yep, he bought the whole thing, just as she'd guessed. She's never seen anything like it, asking if he happens to own some kind of money tree. But since he can't exactly reveal anything about the system he has, he just plays it cool. He decides to stay silent, even though what he has is way better than a simple money tree. Feeling a lot more comfortable now, she decides to sit on the incredibly luxurious sofa. Seeing this, he tells her there's no way he's taking her home so late at night. She might as well choose one of the rooms and just stay over, he says. And what do you know, she actually accepts the main character's generous offer. When she asks if he has any women's pajamas, he obviously answers no. I mean, that would just be weird if he did, right? However, he promises not to peek, so she can sleep however she feels most comfortable. This, of course, just ends up making her even more flustered than before. While she heads for a shower, he goes upstairs to see if he can find any spare pajamas. Suddenly, she slips and calls for him to come in, saying that she fell. Worried about her, he rushes in and, to his surprise, finds her with a special request. She says that she hurt her ankle and asks for his help to take a shower. And since our guy doesn't mess around, I think you know what kind of help he gave her. To be honest, I think she definitely slipped on something, if you know what I mean. The next morning, she wakes him up in a panic, worried that she's going to be late. She tells him if he gets up right now and drives her to work, she'll give him 5 stars. After dropping off Miss G, Lin remembers that he hasn't eaten anything yet. So he decides it's probably a good idea to take a break and grab some breakfast. Clearly, he went to the place he owned, but he didn't want to make a big scene. He tells his general manager that he would just be there for a quiet meal. He wanted to be discreet without revealing to any of the employees who he really was. As soon as he enters, he calls a waitress over to be served. And you are not going to believe who walks over. The waitress is the manager who fired him. And in Chapter 1, she starts humiliating our protagonist all over again. She says she never thought she'd find scum like him in a place like this. Furious at how he's being treated, he starts to argue back, but once again, she just isn't having it. She keeps laying into him, saying if it wasn't for his rich girlfriend, he could never afford to eat here. Soon enough, one of the other employees tries to tell her to back off. She says it would probably be better for her to stop talking, but does she listen? The new manager completely ignores the warning and just keeps running her mouth, saying all the things she really shouldn't be saying to Lin. To keep things from getting any worse, he tells the employee to go get the general manager. But the humiliations don't stop until he finally asks if she ever learns from her mistakes. He says that out of respect for their time as old colleagues, he's willing to do something. He's going to let this one massive mistake of her slide, and just then, the general manager arrives. Now pay attention, because this is the moment everything flips on its head. She tells him to call security and kick Lin out for being a poor troublemaker. But the only one who gets a scolding is her. The manager reveals Lin is the actual owner of the place. So if anyone should be kicked out, it's her, but she still doesn't believe it. She's convinced the manager must have been deceived somehow. After all, she knows Lin. He was just her former pathetic coworker. But the only one who deceived anybody here was her. The manager wonders how on earth she passed the interview. As if that wasn't already a big enough blow to her ego, he's not done yet. The manager says he's also going to blacklist her from the entire industry, which means her career is completely over. No company will ever hire her again. After that whole scene, she's dragged out by security, finally apologizing to Lin for how she acted. After solving that little problem with the bitter ex-colleague, the story moves on. The general manager apologizes for the whole disaster, messing up his boss's meal. Our hero accepts, just asking him to do a more thorough background check next time. A little while later, he gets a call from an unknown number on his phone. Okay, so that drama's over, right? Wrong. Stick with me because a new player just entered the game. It was the senior vice president of a company, a woman named Tyne Yang, who wants to get to know him. She asks him when he might have some free time so they could meet and talk. But he's got another job to do in the morning, so he can't make it. He tells her he'll have to contact her later, and she agrees to wait. Later, her assistant asks if Lin agreed to the meeting, but the vice president says no. He had told her he was busy, so instead, she decides to visit one of her colleagues. Hearing her boss's new plan, her assistant quickly makes the arrangements. She decides to call for a driver to take them to the location. But little does she know, the driver she's about to meet is the exact man she's been looking for. He gets a request on his ride-sharing app, and since it's close, he decides to accept. When he arrives, he meets the vice president and her assistant waiting for him. He asks if she's the Mrs. Tyne who requested the ride, and she confirms it. But trust me, you can see in her eyes, her mind is completely blown. She can't help but admire just how handsome our protagonist is. When Lin tells her to get in the car, she's stunned he's a driver for the app. Even the assistant is confused, wondering when their company became so influential. But he doesn't have time to waste, so he asks the beautiful lady to get into his car. And here we go again. The second she gets in, she asks if he's just here to enjoy life. She even sneers that a lot of girls must find his whole act interesting. He calmly asks if there's a company rule against driving a supercar. She says no, but warns him to watch his words and actions. After all, a wrong move could get him suspended for damaging the company's image. He smirks, asking if she really has the power to suspend his license. And that's when she drops it. She's the senior president of the company. He doesn't seem to buy it for a second. In fact, he's got a surprise for her. He reveals that he just so happens to be a shareholder of that same company. So she pulls out her vice president card, proving she isn't bluffing. But he fires back that he wasn't lying either. Yesterday, he bought 21% of their shares. Turns out she'd called him just a little while ago asking for a meeting. Only now does she realize that the new shareholder she was desperate to meet was Lin. Her whole attitude flips. She immediately apologizes for offending him in any way. She begs for a chance to sit down and talk properly after the ride is over. But he's not letting her off that easy, saying he needs to finish some other rides first. Panicked, she just tells him to get in touch whenever he's free. But when the ride ends, she can't even pay him. Then a message pops up on his phone. It says that because he violated company regulations, his license has been suspended. He instantly realizes who's behind this, and you just know this is gonna be good. It was probably that entitled jerk who called him earlier who filed the complaint. And the place he just dropped Miss Tian off, the exact same company that suspended him. While she's freaking out about offending a major shareholder, our guy is thinking something else. The main character is certain it was that Jinx guy who complained to the platform again. Tyne quickly tells him not to worry, she'll handle this mess immediately. She promises his license will be back in no time. But he decides to go with her to investigate the situation, personally. Okay, let's watch this. Without a second thought, they storm the meeting room. He announces exactly who he is, saying they suspended his license and he wants answers. The president immediately passes the buck to the operations manager. This guy looks at our hero and starts spouting nonsense about his arrogance. saying he can't believe he had the guts to show up there after his so-called terrible behavior. He even smugly announces that he's already called security on him. Tired of the hot air, our protagonist just takes a seat and lets Miss Tyne take over. She immediately declares that the suspension will be lifted. She tells the manager he should have investigated properly before acting so rashly. And so, as vice president, she is officially removing him from his position. Fired on the spot, only when she flashes her ID card does the room finally get it. They finally believe she really is the vice president. The panic sets in. The manager starts scrambling, trying to justify his actions and why he blocked the license. This just makes her ask if he even bothered to investigate the passenger Lin supposedly insulted. Besides, she adds, Lin just bought a massive stake in the company. He now owns 21% of the shares, making him the second largest shareholder. Trust me, you and I both know she doesn't believe for a second he'd insult a passenger. But they still can't wrap their heads around it, saying he's just a simple driver. But Tyne cuts them off, telling them to shut it, since Lin was on his way to actually check out their company when they stupidly blocked his license. After all that chaos, she makes a swift decision. Their company's operating status is cancelled. And that, my friends, is when the real panic sets in. The manager is ordered to apologize. He does, rushing over and begging forgiveness for his terrible attitude. But our main character, he flat out refuses the apology. He knows this guy has probably been intimidating people for years, so as a shareholder of Blala, he fully supports Tian's call. Their operator license is officially disqualified. Just then, he gets a call from Miss G and tells the vice president to handle the rest. Okay, business is over, but get ready, because his day is about to take a sharp turn. She's on the line saying her grandfather's birthday is tomorrow, so they're going clothes shopping. For her and for him too, of course he accepts, saying he'll pick her up. He'll grab her in the evening. With that handled, he realizes he can't go empty-handed. What do you even get for her grandfather? While he's wondering, the vice president returns. She reports that his driver's license has been unblocked again, and then some. He's also been given maximum access level, a perk he didn't have before. He asks if drivers have different permissions, and she confirms that they do. It just adds a few auxiliary functions, but one of these functions is huge. It allows certain users to request him directly just by searching his license plate. They can even specify exactly what kind of request they want to make. He's impressed that's a super useful feature. Then he remembers the birthday party. He has a birthday to attend and asks if she knows a good place that sells old paintings. She immediately asks if a painting by Zan Qin would be good enough for him. He's completely stunned that she would even have access to a piece like that. Now I have no idea who this artist is, but that's not what's important here. What is important is that she says their president managed to acquire a copy. If he wants it, she can send her assistant to go and get it right away. He gladly accepts the offer and asks her how much it's going to cost. But she won't accept a single cent, not from their second largest shareholder. He tells her to have the painting sent directly to the manager of the Peninsula Hotel. But Lin hates owing people favors, so he says he'll give her something in return. 1% of his assets for the painting, just so they can call it even. Now let's just let that sink in. 1%, you and I both know that's a crazy number. We're talking 500 million yuan, their local currency. She is absolutely floored. He says his goodbyes, telling her she can keep operating business as usual. He promises not to interfere in her work. In response, she says their president wants to see him. He'd like to invite Lin to visit them in Yangshan when he has the chance. Our protagonist says he'll be heading there soon anyway and will contact her then. It gets him thinking that it's been way too long since he last visited the area. He needs to find some time to go back and visit the orphanage there. After his current ride ends, he gets another perfect 5-star review, of course. A new ride request immediately pops up, with the destination set for his own hotel. And this is the moment we meet a young lady who's about to become a huge headache, named Yang Chang Shin. As he pulls the Pagani up beside her, she immediately challenges him. "Who are you?" she asks. He simply replies that he's the Blala driver she requested. As she hops into the jaw-dropping Pagani, she comments on his company's pretty original marketing gimmick. But here's the kicker: he tells her the car is actually his, that this isn't some corporate idea. But nope, she's not buying it for a second. She thinks he's calling her some naive little girl who's never seen the world. Realizing she's going to be a real headache, he just ignores her and decides to get this ride over with fast. So he decides to take a little detour. But of course, she immediately assumes he's just trying to jack up the fare at the end. Although a moment later, he explains he knows the area, and this is just a little shortcut to get there faster. Still, the annoying girl doubles down, thinking he did it purely to inflate the price so she'd have to cough up more cash for the ride. When the ride is finally over, he parks his Pagani right in front of the hotel and starts to suspect she's got beef with one of his employees since she refuses to even walk through the main entrance. And it doesn't take long for him to get a 1-star review from her. Now pay attention, this is where it gets interesting. Not wanting to sweat the small stuff, he decides to go pick up Miss Ji soon. He manages to meet up with her, but not without reminding her she still owes him a 5-star review from their last ride. She just smirks and says it all depends on his performance today. And with that, he turns on the charm even more, even offering to carry all the bags she's holding. When they get in front of a bikini shop, she decides to stop and buy one. He tells her that after they finish shopping, she can finally make good on that promise from the day they were at his pavilion. She fires back that she never would have made that promise if she knew he was actually the owner of the place. But hey, he didn't force her into anything. Now she has to face the music. An attendant quickly comes over to help them out. And in a surprising twist, she asks them to just go ahead and finish their shopping there. Surprised, he asks why she isn't buying anything for herself. And the divine lady replies that none of them fit, so he should just grab his stuff so they can leave. But he puts his foot down. If she's not buying, neither is he. He even asks if she just doesn't like the styles. But apparently, the real reason is a little more personal. She couldn't find her size. The attendant then blurts out that they only carry sizes from A to D, but since Miss D is a size E, they've got nothing for her. This comment, of course, leaves the poor divine lady completely betrayed. I know what you're thinking, and yeah, that was awkward. He just says if they don't have it here, they can just hit the store right next door, since they'd probably have something that fits. Arriving there, they're both completely stunned by the outfit in the window, or at least he is, as that outfit was a little out there. She yanks him away, totally embarrassed, so they can finally get their shopping done. As soon as they're inside, she asks the saleswoman to point them to the bikinis, and soon Miss D is being shown all the latest models they had. And since she's never worn anything like this before, it's clear she's a little flustered by the designs. In the end, she brings over a much more conservative style for Lin to check out, and the protagonist's honest opinion was that the model was, well, let's just say he had thoughts. Wasn't enough to show off her true, incredible assets. With that, he gives her an idea, suggesting a design a little more fitting for the divine lady. And with her heart fluttering, plus a whole lot of embarrassment, she ends up accepting. She asks the attendant to prep that model in a size E. But he decided to grab the one she originally liked, too. When she mentions that she thought he didn't like her first choice, he admits he actually loved it. But the one she liked was for going out, the one he picked. That was for his eyes only. And trust me, from the look on her face, you can tell she is loving every second of this. After that, she decides to hit the 4th floor, this time to buy custom dresses. Right away, her eyes lock onto one of the dresses on display. And while our main character waits for his divine lady, she suddenly calls for him to come to her fitting room. When he points out that it wouldn't look good for him to go in there, she insists. She only needs help with the zipper in the back. After all, she can't possibly reach it by herself. And let's be real in this scene, I think our protagonist is a little torn on what he's supposed to do right now, because that view. Absolutely breathtaking. He asks if it isn't showing off a bit too much, but she says she has a shawl for her back. Still, he was having doubts that was really a size E. Because it looked more like a size F. That comment alone was enough to make her blush bright red. When she's finally all dressed, he tells her the dress looks perfect on her. So since he approved, she decided she was definitely keeping it. While the attendant was gushing that the dress seemed made for her, another customer arrives with his partner in the background, and this is where things get messy. The gold digger, who we'll call Sang-suga, tells her man she wants a dress just like that one. So he demands the attendant bring the same one for her. But that was the only one they had, a custom piece. He could, however, look at other styles, but the guy just scoffs, saying that from the looks of our protagonist and his lady, they wouldn't be able to afford that dress anyway. So he'd be taking it instead. But then the divine lady appears, clearly annoyed by the rude comment this stranger just made. Sang-suga then asks if she can even afford the price tag on that dress. It costs over 80,000. And our girl replies she can certainly pay for it herself, unlike some people, leaving the other girl fuming. I mean, she wasn't lying. The girl was clearly just using the guy for his money. Immediately, the simp offers the attendant an extra 20,000 in commission if she sells the dress to him, but that was against the store's rules. So our protagonist steps in and offers 200,000. He adds that if the guy even looked at the dress size, he'd know it would never fit his companion. After all, the girl was flat as a board compared to the divine lady. And with that, he gives up on buying the dress, realizing he'd just be wasting his money. For defending the beautiful damsel, she tells him that he would receive a very special reward later. And with that, it was his turn to try on a suit. All right, let's jump in. He arrives at the party and the girls in the background, completely enchanted. They're even saying it's a shame he's not an intern. He then asks what she thought. She just replies that it's a good thing because she was already worried. She was afraid all the other women would get dizzy if he tried on any more outfits. With that, they finally decide to head out, though he's looking pretty eager for something. His reward, later, back at his place in the pavilion, Lin is just chilling. He's delighting in the beautiful sunshine when suddenly an even better view appears. A sight that completely illuminates his day, his night, and probably the rest of his year. And apparently, it wasn't just him who was captivated by the view. The beautiful damsel is clearly just as impressed with his appearance. Noticing her staring, he asks if she's liking what she sees. And of course, she gets all flustered, trying to look away embarrassed. She quickly points out that since she put on the bikini, she has already fulfilled her promise. Lin doesn't waste a second, saying he loves it. He loves people who keep their word, and with that, he pulls her in for a swim. But she immediately grabs onto him, telling him not to let go since she doesn't know how to swim. He quickly comforts her, promising he won't let her go. So what do you think happens next? He asks if she'd like him to teach her. It looks like the divine lady accepts his proposal, but she's still scared of drowning. She asks him not to let her go in the water. The swimming lessons are about to begin. But he teases her that he won't be able to move if she keeps squeezing him like that. After relaxing a bit, she finally feels calm enough to start the lesson. And just when she thinks she's doing great, she ends up panicking. She gets overwhelmed in the water and starts to sink, but remember, he's a man. Of his word, he kept his promise and immediately dives in right after her. Let's just say he passes some of his air to her so she can breathe underwater. My friends, you and I are now witnessing a truly beautiful scene. This moment alone is enough to prove this whole story is worth reading. He asks if she was scared. She replies that with him around, it didn't seem so scary, and after that, He pulls the divine lady into a big hug. I don't think I need to say what came next. Later on, while she was bathing, he asked to use her cell phone. And she just gave him the password so he could use it while he was on her phone. He gets another visit from the system girl who just pops up out of nowhere. She says he's already managed to complete 75% of his career. And his reward for it, the Gene Pier, basically the second largest cruise ship terminal in existence, since he's already finished a good part of his career. He's not far from unlocking his next profession. He thinks that if he keeps up this pace, he'll be able to unlock the next one way ahead of schedule. Just then, the beautiful deity appears again, saying that because of him, she still hasn't been able to learn how to swim, but since this is his house, she can come over whenever she wants, and he promises next time he'll actually teach her how to do it. Then we see an old bed quilt, and he explains. He says it's from the orphanage, so he just got used to having them around. That's the real reason he just can't bring himself to throw them away. After this revelation, she asks if he's an orphan, and you and I have to wait to hear his full story. Alright, let's get into our protagonist's backstory. He was raised in an orphanage. She quickly apologizes for bringing up painful memories. But honestly, he didn't mind. When he was a kid, this woman named Agmer took him in and treated him like her own son. Plus, he had plenty of friends around him, so his childhood was actually pretty happy. She then says she's heading to bed and asks if he can drive her to work early since they have her grandfather's birthday party later that afternoon. And of course, he accepts. Driving her to work every day would make completing his mission that much faster anyway. Next, we see our hero getting a sudden call on his phone. He answers, and guess who it is? It's Agmer, the very woman who raised him. She mentions hearing that he'd broken up with his ex-girlfriend, and immediately suggests a new girl he should meet, someone who's around the same age as him. Out of respect for her, he ends up agreeing to meet this girl. So she sets up a meeting for them the very next morning. When the time comes, he shows up, ready to talk to the girl Agmer recommended. He spots her and her family pretty quickly. A woman greets him. Turns out, this is the mother of the girl he's supposed to meet. She heard that he worked at a real estate agency. But the second he says he got fired, you can just see the contempt wash over their faces. Instantly assuming he's just some unemployed bum, he plays along, saying he's a rideshare driver who can barely pay his own bills. And oh boy, did their disdain for him just get even worse. The mom starts praising her daughter's qualities and demands he buy an apartment in Zongai. The girl starts acting like she's a goddess, saying it's no big deal if he really wants to be with her, so our protagonist decides to play their little game. Now pay attention, because this is where the greed really kicks in. A relative says he has to pay a bride price of $888,000 for good luck. When he calls that an exaggeration, the girl's mother scoffs, saying one of her daughter's friends received a dowry of $1.6 million. He points out that she's basically selling her own daughter. Yeah, she didn't like that comment one bit, but he just tells her to continue the robbery. Next up, her brother steps in with his own demand. He wants an imported car worth over $500,000, a cheap one, he says. The grand total for everything comes out to almost $10 million. And Lin calmly asks if they seriously think he can afford all that. The mother then makes a snide comment about young people needing to stand on their own without depending on family. He gives her a cold, hard stare, telling her his parents are dead. Her brother then mentions hearing the orphanage will be relocated and that Lin would get a huge payout when the land is sold. Finally, after these vultures show their true colors, Lin throws his hot tea right on the scum. He was just messing with them the whole time. But in the end, it's clear they only ever wanted his future payout. As Lin is leaving, the mother is worried about her leech of a son, who swears he won't spare our hero. And trust me, it doesn't take long for him to grab a flower pot to attack. Alright, watch this. A pot just barely misses our guy Lin, and he instantly knows. This whole situation is about to get seriously messy. Because while he dodged the pot, the brat's mom went and scratched his car, leaving a deep gash that left them absolutely frozen. Then the woman starts eyeing his Pagani, and Lin just smirks. He hits her with the price, 2 million just for the repaint. Then asks how they plan to pay. Her whole attitude flips in a second. The moment she sees the car, she's all smiles. Lin isn't buying it. He gives them a choice, come up with the 2 million or see him in court. The second he leaves, the mother immediately starts screaming at her daughter, blaming her for everything. Even the spoiled kid joins in, pointing fingers as if he's totally innocent. Shaking his head, Lin decides to visit his new peer. Now stick with me, because the drama he finds here is even better. He spots the operations manager, getting played by some girl trying to skip out on a bill. Well, she's offering to pay, just not with money, if you know what I mean. Seeing this, Lin steps in and asks if he's seriously just gonna let her walk without paying for the damages. Of course, the manager gets super ignorant. He fires back that he's the manager. So if she doesn't pay for it, the money's just going to come out of his own pocket. Then he storms off. A little later, Lin arrives to meet the employees and introduce himself as the new owner. And just like that, the receptionist leads him straight to the meeting room. Inside, the executives greet him warmly, but there's one person missing. The operations manager. Apparently he was still busy with something else. Right away, the boss tells the receptionist to go find the manager immediately. 5 minutes later, the same guy from the docks walks in. And here it comes. When he sees Lin as the new president, his face just drops. He doesn't know where to look, apologizing, saying that he'll make it right. Begging for another chance, but it's way too late for all that now. Lin just tells the general manager to get this simp out of his sight. After that, he lays out his plan to the executives to modernize the pier. But since they're already number 2, one of them questions if change is necessary. However, our protagonist is not content with being in second place. Plus, he announces he's giving everyone a raise, which gets the whole room buzzing, ready to get to work. As he's leaving, he gets a message from the Peninsula Hotel manager saying someone dropped off a painting for him. On top of that, he gets a call telling him the watch he ordered is finally ready. But he says he's too busy and asks them to send it over to the Kyushu Pavilion. Unfortunately, they can't do that. Because the watch is so valuable, they can only deliver it in person directly to the person who purchased it. So he tells them to send it to the location of Miss G's grandfather's party. Later that night, he arrives for the celebration, and the stunning Miss G is there to greet him. And let's just say she gets a little embarrassed when his eyes start to wander. As they enter the hall, everyone turns to admire the power couple. They finally arrive at her grandfather's table, but unfortunately for Lin, you and I know this won't be simple. And of course, he runs into that same annoying girl. You know this is where the drama's about to kick off. She starts calling him a broke driver, accusing our main character of trying to deceive her. But clearly, our female lead isn't buying a single word of her nonsense. And her grandfather does not look happy with what he's just heard. Even with the cousin trying to explain that the car really is his, the girl just keeps talking trash about Lin. Then one of her friends suggests letting the blue-haired girl's boyfriend see if he's a liar. The new boyfriend steps up, and of course, he decides to defend her. He parrots the same story, claiming Lin is just some nobody driver. When the female lead's father asks what's happening, she explains that Lin is not a fraud. Her grandfather had just ordered security to remove him from the premises. But then, right on cue, the deliveryman for that watch the protagonist bought arrive. The second they see the limited edition watch he purchased, you can see it on their faces. The boyfriend and his girl finally realize they were dead wrong about Lin. After that, the grandfather orders his granddaughter to apologize for her disgusting behavior. But just then, the girl's mother appears to defend this absolute piece of work. Hearing her aunt's words, the female lead refuses to stay silent, realizing she's just jealous. She calls her out for being envious of her boyfriend. The scummy couple then gives their gift. It was a collection of Qing dynasty coins, valued at over 2 million. The female lead then decides to pull a gift from her own bag. She says that this was the protagonist's gift for the grandfather, who seems happy to get it. Even though it's simple, he receives it with a smile, but Lin tells her she doesn't have to lie. He explains that he did, in fact, bring his own gift for the family patriarch. Apparently, not even she quite believed he had actually brought a gift. He then hands over the painting he had just received from the auction. Okay, let's pause a second. The old man is absolutely stunned by Zandakia's art. The price. That painting was worth at least 200 million, but the cousin saw nothing special in it. She even wonders out loud if it's really worth that much money. The old man simply explains that the painting holds a meaning invisible to the ordinary eye. The boyfriend then claims that Lin is being deceived, saying they offered 230 million for it. He says his manager was offered the painting and he refused to sell. The cousin then starts trying to get a rise out of the female lead on purpose. But she was certain Lin would never try to trick people with a fake painting. The scumbag then decides to rip that priceless painting to shreds in front of everyone. He declares that the work was a fake, claiming this is a rule from the ancient world. The beautiful girl is outraged by his actions, but Lin quickly comforts her. He just tells her that he would take care of everything from here. The protagonist announces that the boyfriend's qualification to operate had just been withdrawn. But of course, the guy doesn't believe a word he's saying. That's when Lin reveals he owns 20% of the company's shares and has every right to fire him. Even the female lead says now is not the time for jokes, asking if he really has those shares. She says if he does, she'll reward him later, making the cousin turn red with embarrassment. After that, he tells the scumbag to call his manager and ask if he knows anyone named Lin. So he does, even putting the cell phone on speaker for everyone to hear. He's so sure this will expose all of the protagonist's lies. Trust me, you're gonna wanna see what happens next. When the manager answers the phone, she tells the boyfriend to please welcome Mr. Lin. That Lin only had 20% of the shares. She explains it was because she gave the legendary Zanjuki painting to him. And since he didn't want to take advantage of her, he handed over 1% of the company's shares. And with that, the human scum hits the floor, realizing the colossal mistake he just made. As the second largest shareholder, Lin immediately revokes the snake's operational license. The snake argues he's going too far, reminding him it's her grandfather's birthday. Even his mother chimes in, saying Lin has no respect for the family. Lin just scoffs. If the divine lady had asked, he'd have agreed instantly. But since it was a disposable nobody like her asking, he has zero reason to care. Judging by the grandfather's expression, even he doesn't want Lin to show any pity. He then asks how the family plans to compensate him for the $200 million painting they just ripped to shreds. Immediately, the guy starts begging. He even runs to the rattlesnake, pleading for her help. But now she claims they have nothing to do with each other anymore. Ouch. Terrified of what comes next, the scumbag clings to her leg, begging her not to abandon him. It's pathetic. Seeing this, Lin just tells him it's not worth humiliating himself for a woman like her. After that, our hero tells Miss G's father to gather the entire family. He has something to say to every single one of them. In the living room, the grandfather asks what this big secret is all about. And here's where it gets wild. The rattlesnake tells him to just spit it out, so he does, revealing she's been meeting two different men at his hotel. Better yet, he has video proof on his phone of what she was really doing there. He shows it to the grandfather, who instantly becomes furious at his granddaughter's complete lack of shame. She tries to lie, saying it was just for business, but gets a hard slap across the face for her troubles. Her mother tries to defend her again, but this time Miss G's father shuts her down. And finally, with the drama over, Lin decides to leave with the divine lady. They have a lot to discuss. Outside, she thanks him for everything. He just tells her to send more ride, requests his way to pay him back. But she seems a little disappointed, almost like she expected him to ask for something more. Now you and I both know what that means. Since the birthday party is officially ruined, he decides to take a few more rides to finish up his mission. We cut to a beautiful young woman who's being hassled by some guy who can't take a hint. But she's not interested. She tells him the car she called is about to arrive any second now. And right on cue, our protagonist pulls up in his ride. He rolls down the window, asking if she's the one who made the request on the app. She says yes, and he tells her to hop in, he's her driver. So she gets in, leaving the creep standing there with his jaw on the floor. Inside the car, she asks why someone with such a nice car is working as a driver. He just replies that the car doesn't matter. What's important is earning your own money. When they arrive at her destination, she asks to add him on her social media. He asks her why she wants to do that. She looks at him and asks if he believes in love at first sight. As he drops her off, he thinks she's way too innocent. Especially since he could very clearly be a bad guy, and she really ought to be more careful. When she's out of the car, he's just thinking that girls these days are too naive. Then his phone rings, and it's that girl from before, the one trying to scam him for money. She's asking him to come pick her up tomorrow, the absolute nerve. Lin cuts straight to the point, asking if she has the $2 million to repair his car, because he's coming to collect. She just laughs, telling him to quit joking, saying the other day was all just a test. Apparently, he passed her family's test, which means they're now a couple. Yeah, he's not buying any of the crazy this girl is selling. He fires back with an ice-cold tone, telling her if they don't pay the compensation, they'll be getting a summons from court, and trust me, you can feel the chill in his voice. A little while later, we see the girl he did pick up is the very same streamer from the other video. She's headed to the international circuit, a place he conveniently also owns. A massive official event is happening there, and she's hoping to do a live broadcast. While they're on the way to the circuit, she gets the cute idea to feed him as he drives. And of course, he is absolutely enjoying this kind of attention. Arriving there, he gets curious about what all the commotion is about. He decides to head inside with her, and they walk right into a scene. Two rival streamers are already locked in a heated confrontation. Miss Yu asks what's going on, and the young man explains the other girl is trying to kick them out. But according to her, the owner of the racetrack himself said there could only be one presenter. As if the racetrack owner personally told her that. The place is huge, more than big enough for all of them to broadcast without issue. But nope, that's not good enough for her. She wants them gone. Just then, someone arrives and announces that everything is ready for her to enter. She says goodbye with a smirk, telling her rivals to leave since their little show is over. For a moment, it looks like they really have no other choice. But just when you think it's over, look who steps in. Lin says they can stay right where they are. Furious with our main character, the girl tells him to get lost. She warns him that if he dares to mess with Kim Chow, he'll disappear without a trace. With that, Lin just challenges her, telling her to go call Kim right now if she's got the guts. Yu tries to calm him down, saying they don't have to broadcast there anymore. She tells him he doesn't need to get angry for them, but he gently refuses to back down. He's not just angry, he makes a promise he'll make damn sure the two of them stream from this spot. When the young man asks who he is, even Yu doesn't really have an answer. But she doesn't need one, she just knows, deep down, that she can trust him. Seeing his friend's conviction, the young man decides to put his faith in Lin too. Following him inside, they see rows of absolutely stunning luxury cars. Parked and prepped to race, leaving both of the streamers speechless. They're just in awe, looking at the pure perfection of these machines. Lin looks at them and says confidently that with him here, no one can kick them out. And it doesn't take long for Kim Chow and the manager to show up, with the rival girl in tow. She immediately starts playing the victim, trying to get Kim to throw them out of there fast. But here comes the twist you and I were waiting for. The manager gives him a warm welcome. When she sees that even Kim knows this guy she dismissed as a nobody, her jaw drops. All right, watch our protagonist shut this girl down by saying he owns the place. Lin then asks if she was a friend, seeing as she had been so rude. But Kim just replies that she was some nobody he was about to toss out. She immediately starts begging him not to send her away right now. If he kicks her out, she says her entire career would be completely over. But Lin knew her type all too well, he had to force her out. And just like that, the security guards come and haul her away. Kim asks if that girl was his new companion and if Lin wants some introductions. He even offers to set him up with some foreign girls. But our hero ended up ditching all that fun just to hang out with Kim. This left the young man shocked at how much power our protagonist must wield. After that, the young man suggests a race on the brand new track. Before they start, Kim suggests a bet to make it more interesting. And you and I both know what that means. Things are about to get wild. The loser has to pay 100,000 for every second of difference. Soon the race is on, but it's not even a challenge for young Kim. Our protagonist leaves him in the dust, winning against him once again. The young man pays out 2 million with a heavy heart, so tired of losing. With that cash, our protagonist tells the manager to get his car repainted. He's got to fix that scratch from the earlier incident. He also tells the streamers to keep the broadcast going since he has to leave. The beautiful streamer just thanks him for all of his help. Kim can't believe it. A beautiful woman is right there, but he's off to do rides. Lin asks if he wants to join in, but the young man refuses. He just politely turns down the offer to come along. As he's leaving the racetrack, he sees only 3 more requests are left. He's about to finish his mission, so Lin decides to pay a visit to his aunt. He's craving her cooking, but she's surprised and says she has to go. She needs to pick up her daughter from school, but still asks what he'd like to eat. She says she'll quickly prepare a meal for him anyway. So he tells her he'll pick up her daughter so she can take her time cooking. He arrives at the school and waits for 20 minutes, but there's no sign of her. He finally asks a little girl if the students are still in class. But apparently, they had all been released a while ago. He decides to head inside and immediately finds a commotion in her classroom. He notices a beautiful teacher there, and for some reason, she seems familiar. At the same time, the mother of another student is putting on a huge show. I'm talking a beautiful display of pure, second-hand embarrassment. All this drama started because the little girl hit the woman's son's face. But she wouldn't have done that if he hadn't mistreated the little one first. That's when Lin swoops in, stealing the scene and dropping a truth bomb. He says with a face like that, her son has 0 chance in the entertainment world. And from the teacher's reaction, you can tell she definitely knows our guy, too. He then asks what happened and why his cousin is stuck there so late. The girl then shows him her clothes, which had been torn by her classmate. So you and I both know the real culprit was the spoiled brat with nothing better to do. But of course, his snake of a mother demands compensation right this second. She says this won't end well. The girl, almost in tears, explains he bullied her first. But the mom finds nothing wrong with her precious son's awful behavior. In fact, she insults the girl, saying that since she's poor, she should just suck it up and stay silent. This arrogant attitude makes Lin finally lose it. And you know what that means. He pulls a Will Smith and lands a solid slap across her face. Outraged, she screams about how he dared to even touch her. Yeah, now we can all see where her kid gets his awful personality from. The old hag then decides to threaten the girl's teacher, saying she'll call her husband to come and sort this whole situation out. But the beautiful teacher just replies that this is all her fault. And even if they went to court, it would be completely useless. The disgusting woman, still wanting to be right, then threatens the entire school, but the teacher is unfazed. She says they can leave and that she'll take care of everything now. However, just before they go, the spoiled brat's father arrives. The kid immediately rats out Lin for hitting his mother. Now it's the dad's turn to act tough, boasting that his boss is the famous Kim Young. And trust me, he makes it clear that if Lin messes with him, his life in Songhai is over. Hearing that name, Lin just smirks and decides to make a call to Kim himself. He asks about some company manager who wants him to kneel, even after winning their bet. Kim thinks Lin is joking at first, but nope, it turns out all of this is actually happening. He tells our hero he'll find out which idiot is responsible for this mess, and that he'll get a full explanation. The clueless father then asks who Lin called. Lin simply replies that it was Kim Young. Naturally, he doesn't believe a word the protagonist is saying. What's more, he thinks Lin just made the whole thing up, right until his own phone starts to ring. He answers, and it's Kim on the line, furious, demanding to know why he dared to provoke Lin. He orders him to pack up all of his things and leave the company immediately. Just like that, his tough guy act crumbles, and he says that he will apologize to Lin right away. The guy is completely floored. He had just taken out massive loans to buy a brand new house and a car. The snake of a wife asks what happened, why he's suddenly on his knees. He tells her he was just fired by Kim himself. After that, he begged Lin to give him another chance, pleading for him not to let Kim fire him. But our hero says nothing. He just gives the human scum a swift kick. It was a good thing he was there to pick her up instead of her mom. Who knows how badly this family would have bullied them. He tells them to get out of his sight and try to become better people. Later on, the little girl is about to tell everyone what happened at school and how Lin acted. But he gently asks her to keep it quiet, and she immediately understands. And so, what we just saw becomes their little secret. The story continues with Lin going to visit the divine lady at her workplace. Arriving there, he sees that even late at night, she's the only one still at the office, working overtime despite being in danger. When he spots her eating some cookies, I gotta admit, it's a pretty cute moment. What a little glutton, way too cute. So he decides to play a tasteless prank on her, making the divine lady practically jump out of her skin. A little while later, she ends up locking herself inside her office and calls our hero, asking him to come pick her up. But Lin plays it cool and refuses, saying he's working out of town. Still, the beautiful damsel insists, telling him that she's really afraid of something being there in the company, and with that, he finally caves, telling her to wait right there. A few seconds later, she hears a knock on the door and rushes over, yelling that her boyfriend will be there any minute. Therefore, that person needs to leave immediately, the second she realizes that voice was his. She dives straight into his arms, telling him everything that just went down. When she finally questions how he got there so fast, he decides to come clean and admits he was outside the entire time. And with that, she starts fighting with him for pulling such a dumb prank on her. Now, to calm the divine lady's heart, he explains he only did it to show her how dangerous it is for her to be working all alone so late at night. After that, he pulls out a container of fried rice he'd gotten from his aunt a little earlier. It doesn't take long at all for her to recognize exactly whose rice that is. Even though she was a multimillionaire, she had a soft spot for street stall food. Since he had just terrified her, the beautiful damsel decides to give him a punishment, and trust me, you're going to love this. He would have to feed her himself. Let's just say this ended up being more of a reward than any kind of actual punishment. It was already getting late, so as soon as she finished eating, it was time to take her home. This just made the divine lady's admiration for him grow even more. Other guys would be getting ready to hit the clubs. But he was the only one thinking about her, picking her up from work. Soon after, Lin gets a call from his buddy Kim, who said he'd arranged some girls that were probably the main character's type. But with an angelic beauty right by his side, Lin just scoffs at the offer. He tells him there's no girl he could find that would ever be better than Miss G Doubting. Kim demands he send a picture as proof, which gives him an idea. Time for a selfie. But since the divine lady had never taken one before, she didn't really know what to do, thinking she needed to put on makeup first. But with a face like that, who even needs makeup? The divine lady ended up being a little too far from the camera, so he asked her to get just a bit closer. After that, he shows her the perfect angle for the ultimate selfie to send over to Kim. And finally, they take the picture their friend asked for, making Kim absolutely green with envy over the beautiful girl who was right next to our guy. On the way out of the building, he told her not to book a ride, since he would just take her home normally, but she wanted to support his work, so she insisted on requesting a ride anyway. And you and I both know he lays on one of those classic one-liners, saying a rich woman came his way. So he had to take advantage of the opportunity, but clearly, the real rich one here is him. Inside the car, she asks him what he should do to create a charitable foundation. After that, she gives him a few key instructions that he should follow, and of course, lays out the risks he could also run into. But he didn't care much about any of that and was ready to do the best he possibly could. A short time later, he finally makes it to the divine lady's house, but his work isn't done. He extends an invitation, asking her to join him in Yangshan the next day. She tells him if she can find a spare moment, she would be honored to go. And when she leaves him that final 5-star review he was waiting for, the system girl from before pops right back into existence. She's here to congratulate him for hitting 100% in his current career. Then she asks him, is he ready to unlock a new one? You know he is. And she welcomes him to his next job experience, physical education teacher. On top of that, he gets another 500 million and a full attribute potion. Plus an item called the Knowledge of the Sages. Lin's a bit skeptical. He thinks being a PA teacher sounds way too easy for this level of reward. But she explains that once he drinks the potion, no subject will be a challenge. Not a single one. This potion was called the Knowledge of the Sages. The system maid explains that it's basically the wisdom of the world's best scholars. All of their knowledge condensed down into one single, powerful vial. He's a bit shocked by how much he needs to know just to teach PA. So without a second thought, he decides to down the potion she gave him. The system girl then officially starts our main character's brand new career. And just as she promised, knowledge of every subject begins flooding his mind. Not only that, she reveals the potion also increased all of his attributes. So now our guy is in absolute peak physical condition. He's so grateful he gives the beautiful system girl a massive thank you hug. Later that night, he gets a call. His custom Pagani is finally ready. He arranges for a pickup and right after, gets a message from the divine lady. Turns out she can't join him on his trip tomorrow after all. But she still went ahead and booked his flight for the morning. The next day at the airport, he finds out he's flying first class. And of course, while he's just chilling on his phone, some drama walks in. A rich kid with 2 girls who immediately start fawning over our protagonist. The spoiled guy, absolutely green with envy, just has to say something. He scoffs that being a rich young master is what matters, not just good looks. Lin just tells him to keep his little ego trip between him and his friends. But the young man sits down and decides to make things interesting. He challenges Lin to a bet, and you and I both know this is gonna be good. The first one to get the flight attendant's number wins, and speak of the devil. She walks in, and the spoiled brat immediately calls her over. He says they both want her number, but she can only pick one of them. Now she remembers being warned that some rich kids might try this exact move. So she politely refuses, saying it's against the company's rules. Adding passengers is strictly forbidden, but of course, he won't take no for an answer. He insists that a passenger's wish should never be refused so easily. Just then, the flight attendant's gaze lands on what Lin is wearing. A limited edition watch that costs well over $10 million. Suddenly, her policy changes, and she asks for his number, leaving the rich kid floored. You just love to see it, and to make matters worse, his own companions start mocking him. All right, you and I are about to watch our boy's friend spot a stunning woman who just walked in. And surprise, surprise, that beautiful lady is exactly who we think she is. It's the divine lady, so our protagonist immediately makes another bet with his buddy. Who can get her number first? Game on. After that, Miss G politely excuses herself, and the other guy immediately tries to make his move. He's trying to strike up a conversation to get her number, but Lin pulls an unexpected stunt. He just flat out says that the young man has zero chance with her. Total silence. The guy is just frozen, with no idea how to react. Our MC then claims he has a superpower. One that can make any woman fall in love with him in a single second. But judging by her face, that already happened a long, long time ago. Since the other guy doesn't know about their relationship, he tells her she can call the cops if she wants. They have 2 witnesses, after all. This just makes her even more embarrassed. But Lin isn't done, saying the plane's too stuffy and he just needs some fresh air. And yeah, you can see she's getting more flustered by the second with this whole situation. With that single move, he makes the other guy completely admit defeat. He has to acknowledge it. Lin is on another level. So Lin asks her why she's here, since she told him she'd be busy. Clearly, that was just a little white lie, so she could join him on his visit to the orphanage. Meanwhile, the friend is just seething, radiating pure envy for our protagonist. And since Lin didn't appreciate what the spoiled kid called him, he decides to confront him. The young man fires back, saying Lin doesn't even know her. Yet he has his arm around her waist, proving he's exactly what the guy just said. And Lin's comeback, "Oh, you're not ready for this," he calls it love at first sight. The kind that leads to a wedding, something that guy would never understand. After that, she gives him a light scolding, saying he has taken advantage of her ever since they got on the plane, earning him a slight pinch. The beautiful damsel is just completely lost on how to respond to his provocations. A few hours pass, and they finally arrive at the orphanage where Lin grew up. Even with cheaper property values in the area. That one building was easily worth tens of millions. This only made Lin's admiration for Wang Ma grow even more. Since she chose to stay here caring for young orphans, instead of living the high life as a rich woman. Soon, some of the kids notice our protagonist and his girlfriend. And she starts handing out the gifts she brought specifically for all the little ones. With a sweet smile like that, it's pretty hard for anyone to resist. When Wang Ma says he should have called ahead so she could have cooked his favorite dishes, he simply replies that he wanted it to be a surprise. And what a surprise, she told him to find a girlfriend, and he came back with a goddess. The divine lady introduces herself, revealing her full name is Gei Chenyang. But I think I'll just stick to calling her divine lady. Or maybe the original Miss Gi, since from now on, they're all one big family. Mrs. Ma told her that she doesn't need to bring anything next time, as the old woman goes to divide the snacks for the children. She realizes that young Lin Yi had also come to visit them with her boyfriend on the exact same day. And we all know this can't be a coincidence. Protagonist. When Miss Gi asks who she is, he reveals the girl lived in the same orphanage as him, but she got into university while he went to Jiangja. And soon enough, we see Yu with her boyfriend, who, let's be real, already looks spoiled. She even brought some gifts for the orphans. But when her man sees the boys admiring his car, he gives them a look of pure disgust. Yeah, the classic rich jerk who thinks anyone with less money is just an insect. The second Yu spots Lin, she gets all excited. She asks him to introduce his girlfriend, and the divine lady politely obliges. She introduces herself, genuinely happy to meet her. And it seems like Yu is pretty impressed, thinking the divine lady is beautiful. Her simp of a boyfriend, on the other hand, is practically drooling over Miss Gi. He steps up to greet her, looking like an absolute fool. But Lin smoothly cuts him off, saying they don't need to be so formal. The guy is absolutely seething, wondering how Lin landed such a gorgeous girl. So trying to look big, he announces he'll donate 100,000 to the orphanage. When Mrs. Ma hesitates, Lin tells her to just accept it. His reasoning, hey, even a fly's leg is still meat. Hearing that, the guy challenges Lin to make a donation too. Lin immediately accepts, saying he'll donate 100 million. Now watch this. The boyfriend just scoffs, thinking he's joking and telling him to quit the act. Mrs. Ma tries to calm things down since they just arrived. But the guy won't let it go, doubling down on the challenge. He boasts that if Lin donates 100 million, he'll donate 10 times that amount. Fine by Lin, he just makes a quick call, gives them the account number and sends it. And when Mrs. Ma checks her account, she sees the 100 million. She almost has a heart attack, seeing that many zeros pop up on her screen. The arrogant boyfriend still doesn't believe it, so he goes to check the phone himself. Seeing it's real, Lin just asks when he'll be making his 1 billion donation. That was the deal after all, he said he would do it. Even his own girlfriend, the divine lady, realizes her man is a lost cause. He just loves picking fights he absolutely cannot win. The guy turns beet red, makes up a lame excuse about having things to do, and bolts. When Yu tries to go after him, our protagonist stops her. He tells her she'd never be happy with a guy like that and to just let him go. Mrs. Ma, still in shock, asks where he got all that money from. The divine lady just says he's involved in huge projects worth hundreds of millions. With that, Mrs. Ma asks for his account number to return the money. But Lin tells her to keep it, saying he can easily make more. Then he just casually asks them to go eat. During lunch, the divine lady asks if he'd go with her to a company branch. Apparently, there are some problems there she needs to sort out. Now get this, she's actually the president of the company Lin used to work for. You know, the one he got fired from on his very first day. Which means she outranks literally everyone in that entire building. You and I both know what's coming next, and it's going to be absolutely epic. But she was a little too naive, thinking that not warning them was a good idea. In the end, he agrees to go with her, saying a quick goodbye to his foster mom. Only then does the divine lady notice her outfit. She realizes what she's wearing and decides to change before heading to the branch. While he waits patiently outside, the beautiful lady appears. She asks for his help with the zipper on the back of her top. But of course, the zipper gets completely stuck on a piece of fabric. He tells her to hold on while he grabs some scissors to cut it loose. Let's just say one tiny thread was causing all the trouble. If he didn't cut it, that zipper wasn't going anywhere. After finally snipping the thread, they make their way to her company branch. At the reception desk, it's obvious the employees weren't expecting her at all. She immediately orders the vice president to bring that year's financial records. And as she starts going through the books in the meeting room, we get a quick glimpse of just how stunning this character really is. All right, now that you've had a look, let's continue. She demands to know what happened to Wang Zhenyi, who held a position of power here. On top of that, the company's accounts are in the red by over 30 million. Without hesitating, she decides to call the police. But just then, a group of thugs barge into her office, saying they're here to collect a 1 million debt that Wang Yi apparently owed them. The leader notices how beautiful she is and makes a disgusting offer. He says if she spends some quality time with him, he'll forgive the debt. The remark leaves her absolutely speechless, and here's where it gets good. Our guy, being the quick thinker he is, realizes this is all a setup. When their leader gets angry, Lin calmly asks if 2 million is enough. Enough for them to drag Yoongi to the police station for him. You and I just saw their loyalty get bought in about 2 seconds flat. All Lin wants is for them to go after the traitor, the one who was embezzling all the money from her company. Totally overwhelmed, she asks for his help, and he tells her to gather the financial data. He promises he'll take the information to the police for her. At the station, he warns her this can't go public. If it hits the financial news, her company's market value would plummet. After hearing his plan, she thanks him, admitting she would have been lost. She doesn't know what she would do without him by her side. Lin says she has to go alone because he's going after the embezzler himself. But that's dangerous, she insists, saying she can't let him go by himself. But our protagonist just hands her the documents, telling her not to worry. And with that, he heads off to find the guy, leaving her to pray for his safety. 3 hours later, Lin reappears with Yoongi in tow. We see the divine lady looking completely defeated by the whole situation. But the moment she sees our protagonist, her whole world lights up again. She runs over, immediately asking if he's been hurt. He just tells her he's fine, and the rest is up to the police. All right, let's jump right in. The conman begs Miss G for forgiveness, offering to return the money, the house, the car, and everything else he bought. But yeah, it's way too late for that. He's about to pay for his crimes. With that loose end tied up, they have nothing more to do there. She tells Lin and the others to go say goodbye to their mother and then head back to their place in Zhongai. She says that thanks to him, everything worked out perfectly in the end. So, as a reward for his hard work, she's going to cook a special meal just for him. Lin is honestly shocked to discover she even knows how to cook. And she reveals she actually has some serious culinary skills. And just like that, she decides to show off what she can do in the kitchen. And let's just say it looks like she must have a few other hidden talents as well, if you catch my drift. While he's digging into the amazing meal the divine lady prepared especially for him, she insists that he try even more. He then mentions that he saw her talking on the phone earlier, asking if she was sorting out the final details of the case, but nope. She was already preparing the paperwork to hire a brand new person the next day. And since she's the company president, she has to handle these things quickly. After Lin finishes his meal, he says he never expected her to be this good at cooking. In fact, he decides to give her a reward as well. She tries to tell him he doesn't have to do anything, since he was the one who helped her company so much. But Lin just moves in closer, ready to give her that reward anyway. He asks her to close her eyes, and she gets one heck of a prize from our main character, who clearly doesn't mess around. Now, the next morning, things take a sharp turn. He notices she's already left for the company when he ends up getting a mysterious call out of the blue. It was the HR manager from the university where he'll be teaching, saying he can officially start the very next day. He just replies that he'll be there on time. Early the next morning, we get this gorgeous view of the university campus where you could already tell the place was filled with beautiful, healthy students. Just then, he gets a call from his girlfriend, the divine lady herself, asking him to give her a ride. But he tells her he can't anymore, as he's no longer just a driver, he's a professor at the university now. And since it was his first day of work, he couldn't just leave early. At first, she doesn't quite believe him. But clearly, with the physique he has, and all the instructions he got from that potion he drank, he was more than fit to be working there. It doesn't take long at all for the university students to start admiring our protagonist, saying if their professor was that handsome, they would never miss a single class. In the office, Lin introduces himself as the new professor. And here we finally meet the university's director, a woman named Suji. You can tell right away she's not here to mess around. She quickly tells him that he will need to work hard. She has a task for him to complete, and only then will he actually get a class to teach. Now, I'll try to summarize this next part for you. From what I understood, Lin's task is to secure some hotel internships worth 3,000 with accommodation included for the intern. But he can already see right through the director's real intentions. All right, let's watch our boy Lin turn a totally impossible task into a flex. A moment later, one of the professors shows Lin his new workspace. He even gives him a few pointers so he can get the job done faster. With that, Lin pretends he's going to call the hotels the professor suggested. But of course, our guy has a much better plan up his sleeve. You see, since he owns the Peninsula Hotel, he just calls his own general manager. He tells him to get over to his location, and fast. The manager rushes over. A short while later, the protagonist explains the whole master plan to him. And with that handled, he heads straight back to see the director. She thinks he's breaking the rules by bringing a total stranger onto campus. She's about to unload on Lin, but watch this perfect comeback. He simply says that she asked him to find an internship, and he did. And this man right here, he's the one in charge of the hotel he contacted. His manager, completely out of the loop, thinks the director is Lin's new woman. Yeah, it seems he got the wrong idea entirely. She, on the other hand, is just stunned that he actually found a place so quickly. That's when Lin introduces the general manager of the Peninsula Hotel. The manager introduces himself and says he's ready to discuss the details. He confirms the offer, a salary of $3,500 plus full accommodation. He even adds that if she has any complaints about the pay, they can negotiate. But the director, she has zero complaints about that offer. So her colleagues will be contacting him again very soon. As a reward, Lin gets a bunch of proficiency points, completing 20% of his career. And for that, you and I just saw him get the Zhonghai Longshan Institute, which is, just a hugely famous research institute. No big deal. Lin is so shocked by the reward he's just staring off into space. The professor snaps him out of it, and Lin says he was just lost in thought. The professor is just blown away that he managed to solve such a hard problem. A little while later, Lin's general manager says his goodbyes and leaves. So Lin asks if he can finally schedule his class for the next day. This time, completely out of excuses, she has no choice but to say yes. And with his mission complete, our protagonist takes his leave. As Lin walks out, she tells her secretary to prepare a single class for him. And it's not just any class, it's the physical education class. And here's the thing, the attendance rate for PI is notoriously low. We're talking less than 30% of students even bother to show up. If the attendance rate drops below 95%, the professor's salary gets cut in half. But it seems that was her trap all along, a perfect responsibility for Lin. Lin, meanwhile, heads off to visit the cruise port that he recently acquired. When suddenly a car almost runs him down, and the driver starts blaming him. And just like that, a new challenger appears. Trust me, you're not ready for her. The woman storms out of her car and immediately starts bragging about its price. It's worth $1 million, she boasts, saying he could never afford to even scratch it. The protagonist just scoffs, telling her that it's just an A8. And what's more, he says, not even when he drove a Pagani did he act like her. All right, you and I are about to watch this woman's pride get absolutely demolished. In the meeting room, she gets called out for being late and starts making excuses. She blames some random person she ran into out in the parking lot. You can instantly feel the rivalry between her and another employee at the company. And then our protagonist appears, leaving the woman from before completely surprised. Turns out the guy from the parking lot was the very man funding the entire project. When Lin asks if she's an employee here, someone else quickly explains her role. They say she holds an important position and is actually quite famous here. But if she's so famous, she should leave, since they don't need people like her. The woman's attitude flips in a second, and she starts apologizing for everything. She begs him for another chance, but people with her attitude don't get one. She's kicked out of the operation, losing the biggest opportunity of her life. After that, the other young woman from before begins to explain her master plan. Her goal is to build the largest cruise terminal in the entire world. Lin actually likes her idea and asks what she'd do with $200 million. She immediately replies she'd make that port one of the top 5 in the world. He ups the stakes, and this is where you can feel the entire room just freeze. What if he invested $800 million to keep it as the leader for 10 years? The exorbitant amount of money leaves everyone completely speechless. But still, the young woman confidently replies that she can meet his expectations. And with that, he finally decides to leave, satisfied with her answer. He says he'll wire $200 million in advance for the project to start. Later, our protagonist receives a call from the director of the Elshin Research Institute. She wants to discuss the details of Lin's recent acquisition of the place. The next morning, he arrives for his new workday looking surprisingly happy. But the director immediately tells him to get himself ready for class. She explains the attendance rate, saying if it's lower than 95%. The bonus for the entire class will be reduced, but he's totally unfazed. He's not really there for the money anyway, he just genuinely wants to teach. However, she's already arranged everything, so he's basically got no choice. He is practically forced to teach the class right now and heads to the room. On the way, he runs into two female students who stop him, asking if he's teaching. Lin tells them that his next class is indeed physical education. In fact, he was just heading to the classroom at that very moment. The girls get excited and ask for his classroom location so they can support him. After telling them the room number, he says his goodbyes and continues on. The second he leaves, the girls send a message to all of their friends. The new professor is teaching in a few moments, alerting everyone to attend. Meanwhile, in the classroom where Lin is supposed to teach, it's pretty empty. There are only a few people there when the director arrives, looking smug. She's betting he can't even get 50 people. Trust me, she is about to be so wrong. But suddenly, they notice a huge commotion outside and discover a massive crowd. Hundreds of students had gathered to come and witness our protagonist's class. The director, not knowing what to do or what was even happening, is left stunned. It seems Lin's good looks just attracted every single girl in school to his class. You're about to see the most chaotic first day of class ever, because it wasn't just the girls who showed up to see him. Even male students were there. And in no time, the classroom was completely packed. The director tells the extra students to leave, since there was no longer a need for a headcount, but one girl refuses. She insists on staying, saying she wants to see for herself how he teaches this class. Lin just plays it cool and decides to start by taking attendance, telling anyone not called to come forward and register. A full half hour later, they've already blown past name number 120 and still aren't done. The director mentions that they could probably just put registration aside so they can start the actual class already. But that was a huge mistake. The girls did not like that idea one bit, worried he might end up forgetting them. Besides, it was his class and his teaching method, she shouldn't interfere. The director suddenly feels the chilling pressure of dozens of death glares aimed directly at her. And yeah, she finally gives in, letting Lin teach the class his way. Once registration was finally complete, he was ready to start the lesson, but then a girl says that he hadn't called her name yet. So he just decides to retake the attendance. But then the bell rings. He just dismisses the class, saying that they'll continue next time. The director is left completely speechless. She has never seen anything so ridiculous in her entire life. He then asks his superior, so was my class up to par, and through gritted teeth she's forced to say yes. And with a smirk, Lin says his goodbyes, claiming he still has a lot to do. A short time later, a familiar face pops up. It's the system girl. And trust me, the reward she's bringing him is a total game changer. She's congratulating him for successfully acing his first class. The prize, a master memory. He asks her what the difference is from the knowledge of the sages he got before. Basically, the knowledge of the sages was extremely broad, covering many topics. But this master memory grants him super specialized, expert-level experience in one specific field. The only catch is that he has to be the one to select it. So he immediately asks the system who the most powerful person is in the field of chips. She gives him a name, and he decides to acquire that exact same person's mastery for himself. With this, he was more than prepared to make a monumental breakthrough in chip technology. Over at the Ling Research Institute that Lin now owns, we meet two employees, Lu Ying and Liu, two key people there. They're waiting for our protagonist to arrive, and the girl looks absolutely furious. She's convinced her life's research is about to be ruined since the institute was acquired by some rich young kid. The vice president, however, tries to calm her down. He tells her she's being way too hasty, judging someone she hasn't even met. Another employee joins in, agreeing that there's no way this new boss knows anything about research. And you can just feel the tension, right? Because speaking of the devil, a moment later he arrives. The vice president quickly begins showing our protagonist around the facility. Lin immediately comments that all their equipment looks completely outdated. But the old man can only reply that they have no way to replace it at the moment, since they're completely out of money. The old man then hands him some files on their current situation, and Lin says he'll take a look and get back to them. All right, stick with me here, because this is where the drama kicks off. The guy pulls the whole as a team member card, basically telling our protagonist to back off and let them do their work however they wanted. After that, he asks about the credentials of the guy who just shut him down. The man proudly states he has a PhD in information and communication technology. But Lin's comeback is brutal, saying he thought the diploma was from kindergarten based on how childishly he was acting. The guy then starts to brag about his elite university, acting like he's some kind of rare genius, asking Lin not to insult him. But our MC only looks down on ignorant people like him. Besides, he has absolute control over the whole institute. So if the guy doesn't want to follow orders, he can just pack his things and leave. The vice president quickly jumps in to defend him, but the researcher doubles down, saying that if he left, it would be an incalculable loss for Lin. This is all because of the special research he's doing. That will supposedly advance the national chip industry by at least 10 years. Now get this, with an ego that massive, you and I both know Lin is about to teach him a lesson. He makes it clear the world would never stop spinning just for one person. But the young man insists that without his genius, that project is absolutely doomed, so Lin asks the vice director what project this is. After the old man explains the complex details of the research, our protagonist just asks if it's difficult. The man replies, yes. With that, Lin decides to just do it himself, right there in his place. The vice president then asks what Lin's degree is in. Upon hearing that he studied marketing, the old man is floored. I know what you're thinking, and yeah, he's just as shocked as we are. With Lin taking charge, even the arrogant guy steps aside to let him work. And just a moment later, he's already found several bugs and other critical errors. After completely rewriting all the code from scratch, they could finally get on with the rest of their tests. When the guy asks if he needs to double-check, Lin just says it won't be necessary. The vice director, taking a closer look, is stunned. He realizes Lin created a perfect, flawless structure for them to use. And since he solved a problem the young genius had been stuck on for ages, he could now leave. They no longer needed him there. Following this epic shutdown, Lin tells the old man to make a list of all their outdated equipment. It's all getting replaced with top-of-the-line models. Furthermore, he says he would call later to wire $50 million so they could purchase the new gear, and he's also adding a salary bonus for the whole team. With that, the old man is completely speechless and just thanks him for his insane generosity. The girl then apologizes for her earlier attitude and says she wants to ask him a professional question. However, since he doesn't have much time, he just gives her his personal contact info so she can reach out to him later with any questions. On the way out, the vice director decides to accompany him, and suddenly Lin notices two people waiting there. One of them is the president from the university where our protagonist used to teach. He was there most likely to borrow the laboratory. But since the institute had been bought, he'd have to speak directly with the new owner. And we all know this is about to get really awkward. to introduce the lab's mysterious new owner. And trust me, the president is not ready for this reveal. After the greetings, he says they're happy to pay for using the facilities. But the protagonist just waves it off, saying it's not necessary. In fact, he adds, he's donating all the old equipment to the university, since it's useless to his team now. The president's secretary asks if they've met, and Lin confirms they ran into each other in the HR department a few days back. The president is stunned, asking why a man with enough money to buy an entire research institute is bothering to teach at a university. And our guy, cool as ever, just says he's here to experience life. Now, because Lin made such a huge donation to the university's research program, the vice president was planning on promoting him to vice director. But our guy doesn't want that kind of attention. So he decides to give the position to Lin instead. But with a catch, they'll keep it under wraps, so only a few people will know the truth. The next day, Lin is just getting ready for work when, of course, a spoiled little brat arrives to ruin his peace when Lin hears the kid behind him and asks who he is. We find out this punk is some kind of obsessive fan of director Sue. He's here assuming Lin is making trouble for her. But really, you can just smell the jealousy coming off this guy. The kid calls Lin a nuisance and tells him he should just get lost. But our protagonist doesn't take orders from anyone, especially not from some entitled brat. The professor tries to warn Lin to keep his mouth shut, pointing out the kid is the school vice president's nephew. Right on cue, Miss Sue arrives, asking the spoiled kid what he's doing here when she specifically told him to stop visiting her office. She makes it crystal clear that her professional relationship with Lin is none of his business. You and I both know that shut him down real quick. He's just left standing there, completely humiliated by how close they are. After she explains she only did it because she was tired of the kid constantly pestering her. But our protagonist just smiles, saying he doesn't mind helping a beautiful woman. And with that single line, he definitely gets her to see him in a whole new light. A little while later, after the kid finally leaves, she gets a call from the university's vice president, who says he specifically wants to talk to Lin. She tells him to play nice and try not to make his situation any worse. Over in the vice president's office, we see the spoiled nephew gloating, absolutely sure that Lin is getting fired at that very moment. But before anything else, Lin wants to know the real reason for his termination. The vice president claims that Lin's skills simply aren't good enough to qualify him for a teaching position at their university. So what does he do? He casually pulls out his phone to reply to a message from the university president, the one who just told him everything was set for him to become honorary vice director. But now that he's being fired, I guess there's nothing he can do about that. Now watch this. The moment the president hears this, he practically sprints over to the office to figure out what on earth is going on. The vice president tries to explain that Lin just isn't suitable for the job. But of course, the president isn't buying it, especially after he went through so much trouble to get him there. Him into the university as the vice director. And still, the vice president managed to drag him through the mud after all the trouble he'd gone through to bring Lin on board. The president snaps, telling him Lin was the director of the Longshan Research Institute. And let's be real, the only ones unworthy of being there were the VP and his arrogant nephew. He tells them to resign on the spot. The disgraced vice president begs for another shot, but the president isn't having it. He's given him way too many chances, and that nephew of his is a magnet for trouble. For his trouble, the young man gets a hard slap across the face for his entitled attitude. After all that drama, the president turns and sincerely apologizes to our hero. He doesn't stop there. He offers Lin the now vacant vice president position. But Lin politely turns it down, saying he just wants to be a simple professor and live a quiet life. The president, knowing Lin prefers to stay low-key, suggests a compromise. Officially, he's the vice director, but in reality, he holds the power of the vice president his true position will remain a secret. In the end, Lin agrees to the terms. Back in the director's office, she and the professor are stewing, convinced Lin is about to be fired. But then the president walks in with Lin right beside him. He cuts to the chase, dropping the bombshell that the vice president and his nephew have both been dismissed. Then he introduces Lin as the new vice director, asking the professor if she's okay with them sharing an office. With that, the president bids them farewell. The professor is completely stunned, asking what just happened. Not only did he avoid expulsion, he somehow got a major promotion. Lin just plays it cool, saying the president must have seen some potential in him. Just then, the system girl pops up again, congratulating him for hitting 60% in his career. And as a reward, get this, he's just been given the Twin Towers. A moment later, his phone rings. It's a call from the Twin Towers management, setting up a meeting so he can inspect the massive property he just casually acquired. With so many new assets, he realizes he needs to start a company to manage it all. The one thing he didn't realize as he walked into the office was the director was in the middle of getting changed right there. An employee quickly shoves our protagonist back out the door before he sees too much. Both of them beat red with embarrassment. Later, at some kind of fancy celebration, our protagonist is looking sharp. There he spots the divine lady from before, who seems to need a moment alone. Since he's not made of stone, he decides to go grab some food because a man's gotta eat. Out of nowhere, a girl approaches, trying to add him on a social network, but when Lin turns her down flat, she storms off, completely offended. The protagonist then overhears the divine lady talking with some other women about a massive $800 million project won by a design company. Now pay attention, this is a huge deal. They're talking about the renovation of the ship terminal. And it clicks for Lin, the company they're gossiping about is the exact same one he just hired to handle his own port renovation. A young man then strolls up. Trying to chat up Miss G, turns out she's also got her eyes on that big project. The guy slides in with a business proposal, offering her a deal, suggesting if she wanted the project, he could probably work something out for her. All while our guy just watches from the sidelines. Since the young man held such a high-status position, she suggested he visit her company so they could discuss it properly. But he dismisses that, saying they should just go to dinner to talk things over instead. And that's when our hero finally steps in to take control of the situation. He says the divine lady doesn't have time to meet with someone like him. And she backs him up, saying she already scheduled a date with Lin, so she would have to decline the man's invitation. The guy just calls her arrogant, saying she's missing out on hundreds of millions. But since Lin actually holds all the power over the project, he declares the design contract won't go to him, as he knows a more promising company. In the end, Lin pressures the young man into calling his cousin, who's the head of that very design company. And get this, he puts the phone on speaker, so absolutely everyone can hear what's about to happen. The second our hero introduces himself, his cousin on the phone instantly recognizes his voice. The arrogant guy asks if his cousin knows Lin, and his cousin reveals he is the owner of the ship terminal and that Lin himself was the one who gave him the project. Realizing Lin was the one in charge the whole time, the young man starts apologizing like crazy for his rude behavior just a moment ago. And let's just say, this time our protagonist decides to accept and let the whole thing slide. Afterward, he tells the divine lady he's tired and will be waiting for her in the lobby. And as he walks away, all the women there are completely captivated. When Miss G finally gets to the lobby, he's pretending to be asleep. We see the beautiful woman quietly approach him, trying not to wake him up. But he pulls her in close. He was faking it the entire time, and yeah, we were all waiting for that. The divine lady was surprised Lin had bought the Wanjiang terminal, especially because even with his normal job, he was clearly always making other major business investments on the side. After their talk, she says she can't argue with him and will do her best on the terminal project. But he quickly reminds her that he never actually said he was giving her the project yet. If he didn't, she says, he'd be sleeping on the sofa, earning him a little pinch from her. And in the end, everything turned out perfectly. The next day, he goes to visit the Twin Towers when a girl suddenly appears calling for him. Her name is Mo Chin-wan, one of Lin's old college classmates. It's been years, so she asks what he does for a living now, and he tells her he's a university professor. The girl immediately starts looking down on his job, bragging about how much more she makes than him, even though he was the class nerd back in the day. She then asks what he's doing at the Twin Towers specifically, and he asks if she'd believe him if he said he was getting an apartment. At one point, he asks her if something is wrong with her company, sees the huge crowd and asks what's up. The girl explains a mystery tycoon who bought the Twin Towers is coming to sign the papers today. Trust me, you're about to see one of the most satisfying karma moments ever. All the top execs are lined up to greet him. Just then, her boyfriend shows up, telling her to hurry. She then introduces him to Lin and suggests they all grab dinner sometime. Maybe her boyfriend could even pull some strings to get Lin a job. But the arrogant guy just scoffs and shoots the idea down flat. As if that wasn't rude enough, he says the person she wants him to meet just isn't important enough for him. It would be a total waste of his precious time. With that, she says goodbye to Lin, walking off with a boyfriend who has no idea who he just insulted. Even our hero is a bit stunned by the sheer nerve of that guy. Meanwhile, the company staff is waiting for the new owner, and our guy. He's thinking he only bought 2 buildings, so isn't this welcome a bit much? When the boyfriend spots Lin at the front of the reception line, he can't believe it. The couple is absolutely furious, seeing him where he doesn't belong. They have no clue who Lin actually is. The girl walks over and tries to get Lin to leave, telling him this place is way out of his league. The president sees this and asks her what she's doing. She just replies that Lin's an old classmate who's a little, not right in the head. Then her boyfriend storms in, shouting for security to throw our hero out. But what he gets instead is a massive slap across the face. You and I both know why. The president reveals Lin is the one who bought the Twin Towers. And then he tells the two of them to pack their stuff and get out, immediately. The girl, in total disbelief, asks Lin if it's true, if he really bought the towers. He just tells her he tried to explain earlier, but she wasn't listening. Suddenly, her boyfriend is all smiles, asking Lin if he wants to get dinner sometime that night. Yeah, a little too late for that, pal. Just a few minutes ago, he said Lin wasn't even worthy enough to eat with him. Let's just say the tables have officially turned. The president tells Lin to ignore them and leads him to the meeting room to get started. Once inside, he's faced with a mountain of paperwork. Just looking at it is making him tired. He's got a lot of signing to do. Half an hour later, our hero is finally done. With every signature in place, the president officially congratulates him. He's the proud new owner. The president then asks if Lin has anyone in mind to manage the property, since the Twin Towers are now his responsibility. Our protagonist asks the manager if he has any recommendations. After the manager suggests a good candidate for the job, Lin tells him to set up a meeting. Time to finalize everything. At that exact moment, out on the street, we get to see the loser couple who had just been fired from their jobs. After doing an expert job of ticking off the new owner, the girl breaks up with him. She dumps the same guy she was so proudly calling her boyfriend moments ago. He's shocked she was just talking about marrying him. But she just tells him that Lin wrote her a love letter a long time ago. Now she's going to be with him. It's only in this moment that the guy finally realizes the truth about her. He finally sees what kind of person she really is. In the end, you and I both know it was all just about the money. It seems the only decent person around here is the divine lady, who's nothing like this next girl. A moment later, our main character finally shows up, and this girl, Anaconda, throws herself all over him, claiming she had just broken up with her boyfriend, and trust me, his reaction is what we're all thinking. She replies that since he wrote her a love letter in the past, she was now giving him a shot. He better take advantage of it, but there's a problem. The girl must have the wrong guy, because the one who actually wrote that letter was someone else entirely. It definitely wasn't him. And with that, Anaconda faces some major public embarrassment as the crowd there starts calling her out for her despicable attitude. Our main character, having no reason to stay, says his goodbyes since he still has a lot to do. But then the rattlesnake girl hops into his car without any permission, asking for a ride home because she'd just been fired. This makes him absolutely furious, seeing as he hadn't even given her permission to get into his car. So we're back with this girl, still insisting on staying in his car. All because they were classmates ages ago. I know what you're thinking, and yep, he's had enough. He decides to call the police on her, and only then does she agree to leave the vehicle. After that, we cut to what looks like a fight, where a suspicious man is demanding Miss Yin give him compensation money. He's making a whole scene over what happened. She says she'll pay for the repair, but the creepy old man assumes that she doesn't have enough money to cover his car's repair. So he thinks of a second option for her to pay off this supposed debt. Basically, she would need to become his secretary. You and I both know where this is going. He'd just deduct the cost from her salary little by little. However, hearing this, the young lady's entire tone of voice changes, telling him the old bastard is dreaming. The scum then takes a cloth out of his pocket with some kind of substance on it, shoving it right in Miss Yin's face. With that, she starts getting dizzy after inhaling whatever was on the cloth. But lucky for her, our protagonist suddenly arrives. The second the young lady realizes her hero has appeared, she runs straight into his arms. He asks what happened to her wrist since it was all red, and she tells him it was that bastard from before who was trying to knock her out. When Lin asks for more details on what really happened, she explains the pervert's ridiculous story. According to him, the wind blew her motorcycle over onto his car, and he started demanding she pay for the damage. But Lin has some sharp detective skills, and he starts to think. It wasn't even windy today, so there was no way her motorcycle could have just been knocked over. And since there's a security camera filming everything, Lin says that they should check the footage to see if the suspect's story is really true. You just have to watch this. The pervert immediately changes his mind, saying he'll find a place to repair his car himself, realizing the man is suddenly in a huge hurry. Our protagonist says that if there was something suspicious going on, all right, let's jump right in. Lin threatens to call the cops, and the guy instantly panics. He starts begging, playing the family card, and talking about his kids. He pleads with Lin not to make the call, but just a moment ago, this same guy was about to knock out a woman and drag her off somewhere. Seems Lin was feeling way too generous because he decides to let it go. He gives him a final warning, saying next time he's going straight to jail. With all the confusion over, Miss Yin finally admits that she's feeling really dizzy. So Lin tells her he'll get her home right away. Inside the car, he asks why a sales manager like her doesn't have her own car yet. She explains that it's probably not a good look since she just got the promotion. He tells her not to care about what people think and that one of these days, he's going to take her to a dealership so she can pick one out for herself. Now here's where it gets complicated. Miss Yin starts seeing things, likely from that drug she must have inhaled from the cloth, and it doesn't take long at all for her to offer herself to our hero as payment for saving her. I mean, it's not the worst offer, but Lin tells her not to be so impulsive. He tells her to cool it, that they're almost at her house when they arrive. You can immediately tell that the beautiful young lady hasn't had much time to tidy up the place lately, or maybe she's just lazy. Despite the whole mess, she immediately starts cleaning up, apologizing for the scene. Lin mentions that he's feeling a little hot, so she suggests that while she showers, he can just sit down and wait, and they can eat something when she's done. So that's what he does, passing the time by playing a popular mobile game. But it doesn't take long for her to reappear, asking for his help. She needs him to check on her. Her body feels hot, and she's still incredibly dizzy. Where I'm from, we usually call that a fever, but her problem was something else entirely. As she rests in bed, he asks if she's living here all by herself. And she reveals that she recently got divorced, so yes, she lives alone now. The poor girl has become incredibly needy, asking Lin to stay with her. Just for a little while, and after a moment, he gives in and decides to keep her company. Even with a literal deity supporting him, he still lets himself get carried away. After the betrayal he suffered, I guess you and I can see why his trust is broken. After everything settles down, he wants to know why she got divorced. She tells him that the moment her husband decided to cheat on her, their relationship was completely over. Lin admits that he can't even imagine why any man would ever have the guts to betray such a beautiful woman. Ironic considering what he just did to that divine lady, as he's no longer needed. He decides it's time to head out, but she quickly asks him to stay. She says it's too late and the drive would be tiring, so he should just leave. In the morning, however, he has to teach the next day, and her house is way too far. It's much better for him to just leave now, and speaking of the next day, early in the morning, he arrives at work to find something wrong with his desk. The director's secretary informs him that since he's the new vice director,